turn your devices off or set them to vibrate if you can. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Short prayer. Precious Lord, dear God, we do thank you for what a great nation we live, what a great community, dear God, and we pray that you are with us to give you the glory for everything, to give us wisdom and direction. Dear God, we do pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, and before Ms. King calls for the roll, I just want to tell anybody that's in TV land, apologize for the delay. Mr. Tom Gregory asked me to mention that we ran over a little bit in the caucus meeting, and that was the cause of the delay here. So if Mrs. King could call for the roll.
Granchi.
Here.
Bariak.
Here.
Kropp.
Here.
Zimmerman.
Here.
Sputzer.
Present.
All right. Special presentations, there are none. Public comments, and this is limited to agenda items, so give your name, your address in 3 minutes until previously requested. Longer time, and there is none, so anybody want to address council?
Katie Carl, 128 West Quarry. You have quite a few things on the agenda this evening that are of concern. You have one to hold Mr. Kropp in contempt of council, but there is nothing on here for the other council member that made a public statement through the mayor and who is now allowed at the council meeting this evening. And the public statement was for course of action, and you're allowing the council member to be at the meeting without...
That's not on the agenda, and she hasn't went to court for anything, so we need to not even discuss that.
You have one for Mr. Kropp.
That's
sir.
Two completely different issues.
It's also in your meeting minutes,
And
sir. That is on the agenda.
You're taking up your time.
So, and again, the interruptions. You have a motion to approve the opt-out costs analysis for the water and electric meters as proposed. Don't know what the determination is. I'm assuming you're going to discuss that. And all the associated costs. Do you have handouts for the public? It would be a question. But the other concern is, too, you also have an executive session for employment, dismissal, discipline for finance director and city manager. If there's any other things, if there's been a decision that's going to be made after the executive session, if you can let us know. But this is a concern for all of us citizens on the decisions that are going to be made for our community in our best interests. If you can please let us know. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Bud Federoff, 321 Ridge Road, Newton Falls. This is reference Resolution 32, 2021, authorizing the city of, no, that's, I'm sorry. This is the one for the charter. Yeah, 33, 2021. Resolution to the electric promotes amendment to the Newton Falls City Charter. I've been on 3 different charter amendment committees. One of the problems after you're on it, you get to see the way it actually works. These committees work very hard getting the wording down exactly as to what their thoughts are. We submitted them. They go to the city manager, council, and a city clerk. And then in the interest of condensing things, why they feel they have to condense something, a lot of the stuff is condensed down as to where it loses the actual intent of what the commission wanted. It's like, okay, you guys submit something and then we'll decide what we want to put on the ballot. And that's what I saw 3 different times. A lot of things that we're discussing now were actually discussed by these different committees, the charter. They only come up once every 5 years. They have no authority other than to meet. That's it. And since we're doing the changing here, I'd like to see as to where these are put on verbatim from the committees and not go through a censor program like we've been doing in the past. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Tim Stinson, 253 Arlington. Got a couple of things. First of all, on the meter opt-out thing, I'd like to thank the city manager and Mr. Kropp and the two superintendents. I was part of those meetings and discussions, and one of the major aspects that I don't think was conveyed during the caucus was one of the main points was to make sure that the city isn't losing any money if residents opted out. That's why there's those one-time fees, and the service fee is just that, a service fee for Andrea's time, the finance director's time, and for the meter readers. A meter reader's not going and reading one meter one time in an hour. They're going to be reading multiple. So just do the math there. If they read 10 meters in 1 hour, they're making $50 an hour. Obviously, they're not making $50 an hour. There's other fees associated with that. So just want the council to just remember that the city's not losing money. We need to look forward at with the service fees and things like that, and with the disconnection fee. We should look at raising that, because if half of our disconnects are in the morning and then they're getting reconnected in the afternoon, that's a problem. They're losing a lot of man hours there. Second, the DORA, just had a question on the map. Why aren't we including the covered bridge and the other end of the river? Just don't understand that. And does it incorporate all of Veterans Park? Because the map kind of doesn't look like it is. So I'd just like a better explanation on that. And then the way it's written, my understanding is if I purchase a cup from one, say Mi Amigo, I can't take it to AmVets. You know, that's not necessarily how it works in Vegas and other cities. So I kind of understand it, but I don't. And then the last one that I had was the 2021-19, the cost of living for the employees. Just, I don't remember seeing an actual percentage to that, because I don't think there is one. So you're going to be voting on something that is a yearly increase, but it doesn't actually tied to a percentage or cost of living. So I would just do our due diligence on that, and again, make sure that it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie Lemon, 2750 East River Road. I first want to start off with an apology. Councilman Kropp, on my personal political blog, was rather harsh on you. I stepped back, I took a deep breath, and I apologize for the things that I said.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And that advice came from a good man.
Apologies.
So, but I do want to address the situation with you, which is number 7 under new business. On May 15th, 2017 council meeting, it was unanimously voted on. It was a motion made by Councilman Bariak and seconded by Councilman Beer, and then unanimously voted on by the entire council, that council would be subject to random drug tests. I understand that you have every right to stand up for your Fourth Amendment if you feel like it's being violated. And I understand that there's case law that does back it up. But in this situation, I think you could have possibly handled it a different route. And I wanted to share that with you. Perhaps it would have been better, even though you felt it is against your Fourth Amendment right, to go ahead and take the test and then bring a motion to the council floor, if you feel it's illegal, to work with the law director and the rest of council to either one, have it amended, or make a motion to fully have it appealed and removed from the council rules. I feel like that would have been a better option than the uproar that the town has been in since the last council meeting. Thank you.
Tom Colosimo, 4196 Carson Salt Springs. I can share a little bit more insight on the DORA program. Just in most bars in Ohio, you can't take a drink from one bar into another bar. So you purchase a cup, a DORA-approved cup from, say, Mi Amigos. You can go outside and shop and participate in businesses that have a DORA sticker saying that they accept it. You cannot take that drink into another bar. That's illegal in Ohio. The DORA program is, I think Mark set it up from bridge to bridge, and it would not go into Veterans Park. The city, if it gets approved from the state, the city can narrow that, say the South Canal to Center Street. There's not going to be any public intoxication as far as the bars and bartenders are responsible to make sure they're not serving anybody excess drinks. So there shouldn't be any more public intoxication than what there normally would be. The plan that's being submitted to the state is a wide area in case we get other like-minded businesses here that want to participate. We're still looking for breweries and wineries to move in here. One of our council members is talking to one right now, and we think DORA would promote more commerce in the town and more like-minded businesses. And if you guys have any questions, you can ask me more. Thank you.
Mark Stimper, 1023 Page Court. I'm also the zoning inspector. I put the DORA program together under the direction of Pam. I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on the map. Mr. Stinson is correct. It only goes to the sidewalk of Veterans Park. We didn't want it to extend past that, but that allows you to go to the falls, to be able to see the falls with the DORA cup. And it also goes down to the other bridge right by Subway. That's where the parameters are. Now, we can extend that. We're well under the allotted amount of acreage. At any time, that would just take an amendment, I believe, but that would be up to I'm sure Mr. Fritz could guide you more on that. But I just wanted to make sure that you were perfectly clear on that. And Tom is correct. You can't take one cup into another establishment. But it is to be able to take it outside under the outdoor rules of DORA. Thank you.
Rick Erlin, 611 North Canal Street. I'm referring to some of the financial reports that came up. Specifically, I haven't seen anything specific, and I'm sure that it's coming sooner or later. Ms. Hans and Ms. Julie both have commented on it before, was the expense of our attorney fees. I would think by now we would have an idea of where we're at on our attorney fees. Previous administration had said it would cost $10,000, and I wanted to really know whether that's the figure that we'll be getting. It makes a lot of difference. And something else I would just say, there's been a lot of discussion financially as far as how we're going to pay for the roads. I wondered how we're going to pay for the roads. It's gone from $30,000 that we had, I think $40,000 that we had earmarked.
Mr. Curlin, yeah,
Yes.
the roads aren't really on the agenda.
Well, I'm referring in general to the financial report. But I'll go ahead and I won't say anything about the roads and how we're going to pay for them. But I was curious. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, if not, we'll move into reports, and we'll start off with Ward 1, if Mr. Zimmerman has anything.
Unfortunately, I don't have a report this time.
Okay. Mr. Borak, do you have anything for Ward 2?
Yes. I attended a economic development meeting. We specifically talked about Dunkin' Donuts. We're working on a proposal, and we're going to try to move forward with it. Also, I was at a meeting with the city manager about the water, and I feel that we should have done something since 2015. We didn't. It's imperative that we do raise the rates, and 3.7% on 10,000 gallon will be 19 cents times 10, $1.90. That's a lot of water for one family to use. I know people don't want to pay anything, but we have to raise them, or we won't be able to operate the water plant. The other things that I'll put on the back burner until we come up to the section of the agenda. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Ms. Blitzer, you have anything for Ward 3?
Yes, I do, Mayor. Excuse me. Since Mr. Zimmerman and I were both not here on the September 20th meeting, I would like to go ahead and give the report from the September 15th Treasury Investment Board meeting. And we met September 15th, as I said, at 5:30 in the afternoon, and we met with Jim Peoria. He's the gentleman that handles the investments for the city. And one thing that he did stress to us is that the portfolio is mostly made up of government and corporate bonds. And most of the federated bonds, 99% of those are U.S. government bonds. 1/3 of our entire portfolio is the federated bonds. 1/3 of it is certificates of deposits, and 1/3 is corporate bonds. Now, right at about that point in the meeting, I had questioned Mr. Peoria about the money that had been moved this year. And I had previously requested the Treasury Investment Board minutes, and I had learned that on February 26th, there was $250,000 moved out of the Treasury investments into the general fund. On March 4th, there was another $250,000 that was moved out of the Treasury Investment Board and put into the general fund. On May 6th, there was $500,000, $500,000 was moved out of the Treasury investments into the general fund. This is important because most of you need to know that totals $1 million. Since the beginning of 2021, there has been $1 million moved out of the Treasury investment into the general fund. In addition to that, I'm going to mention that I also brought up in the past about the $462,000 that was taken out last year because of COVID. There is one more thing that you need to be aware of. In addition to the $1 million that came out of the Treasury Investment Board, there was another $150,000 that was taken out of the Treasury Investment Board, put into a special account so that it could hold a place so that we could get the bonds from Huntington. Oh, one more thing I will tell you, because this is something that I discussed during the meeting with them. I did notice that at that time that he had given us all the paperwork, our overall portfolio was down by about $8,500. Now, I will tell you that he explained it because he said that as interest rates go up, the value of bonds come down, and then the opposite is true. So anyhow, he explained it that as interest rates go up, the value of the bonds come down. So that's why we did lose $8,500 in the total portfolio, okay? That's just the total portfolio value, in addition to the $1 million, another $150,000, plus let's not forget about the $462,000 from last year. Okay, that's the Treasury Investment Board, and now I'm going to discuss the Park and Rec meeting that was held on Tuesday, September 28th. They did discuss that there had been some follow-up to the Everett Great House Park that was done by the Girl Scout. The city manager assured us that 2 of the trash cans had been delivered, nets had been put up for the basketball courts. There still are a couple things that the Park and Rec, there's still a couple things the Park and Rec committee members are working on. One of them is some chain link replacements for that Everett Great House Park. Another issue is some blacktop, and then the blacktop would be for the basketball court. Something else the Girl Scout had requested was some cameras to be over in that park. That's still on the burner. And then another issue that was also discussed was dealing with our fertilizer and weed control chemicals, and that is being looked into. Something else that they discussed and is still being researched is benches. And what the committee is looking to do is start replacing some of the older benches throughout town with some newer ones, and they're currently in the process of getting a couple different styles and prices for them. And they're looking at ones that will hopefully have warranty anywhere from 20 to 50 years. So those are still things that they're tweaking on the finer points of. Now, one thing I will say, and thank you, Mr. Stimpert, the Park and Rec Board did ask for a map of the parks, and it's right here, in case anyone would like to come up and see it after the meeting. If you take a look at this, you'll actually see where, sorry, I'm not by the microphone. You'll actually be able to see where the parks are in Newton Falls. A couple of them you might be a bit surprised on. And something else that was discussed is the Commerce Park boat launch. And the county is taking care of that, and the city manager assured us that that is progressing. Another thing that was discussed is the removal of the old playground equipment over at the city park behind the community center. And the city manager said that that is going to be like a really big project. So that's something that will take a lot of time to do, and it's something that, you know, is just going to have to be addressed when time will allow for that type of a big project to take place. The old tennis court poles were cut off and in the pickleball court area, so that's all been done. We were also told that there's the possibility, and Mr. Stimpert mentioned something we could be looking forward towards the next council meeting. Mr. Stimpert may be getting 2 additional part-time workers to help out with the beautification of the parks. And so we'll be looking for that at the next council meeting. They did look at the dimensions of getting the soccer fields moved over into the city park, and that is still something that is still waiting on perhaps some of this old playground equipment to come out before it can be determined whether it's going to be a good fit or not. They did receive the community center mold remediation report. And something that I need to make sure you address, Mr. Fritz, is that the Park and Rec Committee would like to get an opinion from you, and they would like to know, as a committee, where does their power end and where does it begin? And one of the examples that they gave, when we're talking about these permits for, you know, events that go on in town, something that had been mentioned, you know, Does the permit go through Park and Rec first? Does it go through zoning? Then does it go to the administration? Because they're looking at also if they would start charging for the pavilions. You know, if somebody wanted to reserve a pavilion for a family reunion or a birthday party. Park and Recs wants to know where does their power begin and end as a committee? And then one last thing I will also report, the baseball league put $5,375,000 and 150 tons of dirt on 6 of those baseball fields. And they also added $2,549 of fence capping around the fences in the park. And finally, I attended the Pluck a Duck meeting on the 30th, Thursday the 30th. That's all.
All right, thank you. Mr. Grant, you have anything for Ward 4?
Yeah, it was a pretty uneventful period of time. I fielded a bunch of calls and messages from constituents. Got a lot of good feedback on things. And I attended the Utilities Board on the 29th to discuss the water rate increases. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Kropp, you have anything for at large?
I do, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I attended the Economic Development meeting as well. We did discuss the Dunk proposal, and I think things are moving along. I think we've been able to discuss some really good points. And again, something that we've discussed at length here, even during the caucus, and as well as what we're talking about here, is that we're trying to be fiscally responsible and trying to make sure that the city's not losing or giving out more than it's getting, and trying to come up with proposals and ideas and concepts that are win-win or mutually beneficial to grow and develop the community. So I think some of the proposals, some of the items that we've discussed, and that will be, I believe we have a meeting set up in the next week or so to discuss this. But it looks like a good situation right now. So we're really hopeful about that. I also sat in on a meeting with Mike Novotny and the city manager about the wastewater plant, and they had a rate study done as well. And I think the city manager could probably speak to this more, and maybe she'll touch on this in her report. I'm not sure what she'll speak on. But the financial situation, you know, as far as the community is concerned, the different departments and different monies being moved around to different departments, and what, you know, the intake and outtake of these different departments, we're learning more and more every day based on what we came into. You know, I know I'm a fairly new council member. I know the city manager is fairly new. Another new council member as well. We're learning with the changeover. We're learning a lot of information, and I'm just going to be honest. It's been a lot to take in, and it's a little bit overwhelming for the village to come into the situation where not a lot was known about how things were being operated potentially, and now we're learning how things were, and we're trying to do things right. And no matter what happened before us, ultimately making the right decisions and doing the right thing for the village is going to fall on this council's shoulders, because at this point, I think financially, and maybe the finance department would be more than capable of speaking to this, is that we don't have a choice at this point. We have to be fiscally responsible. We have to be more responsible with the way we spend our money and where it's going. And we have debts and things as well that need to be taken care of. So these are very important things that need to be addressed, and I think will be. And again, maybe the city manager can touch on some of these things during her report. I also sat in I was asked to sit in on a full staff meeting, which was excellent. I was really impressed with the fact that all of our department heads and some of the council staff as well were present, and just to hear the dialogue and the communications among members and among the different department heads, be able to hear input and be able to ask questions. I really didn't. I just kind of was. It wasn't a meeting that I was supposed to be. I just was asked to be there, so I did because I was in the building. And the information that was shared among the members, the morale it seemed like it was better. People seemed like they were getting along. People were happy to share that information and answer questions. And I think there's going to be a structure in place moving forward, which is another positive thing that I don't think was necessarily in place, 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago at all. So I think that's really important. And that's all I have right now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Myself, I don't have a ton here either. A few things. I attended the last farmers market that we had at the public park at the end of September, and, you know, I don't give them enough accolades, you know, the different individuals that run that. I mean, it's a really nice thing for the community. I'm thankful for the different people that have their tents and stuff there, you know, month in and month out. It's really a nice thing for a community, and I appreciate that. Attended the Music on the Falls Saturday night, and there again I want to thank different individuals from the Commerce Association, different people that have, you know, really cleaned that area nice and have done some great things in our community. Individuals that come there and they brought food and stuff and just exciting ideas. That's a good time. I'm just really thankful that the individuals that started that and have done that. Attended a meeting today at the school for the athletic complex. I'm thankful that Mr. Aducci invited me there, and I'm going to tell you what, he has a great plan, and I'm in hopes that we can, one way or another, find a way to partner with the school and get something done. What he's got going on, I didn't promise him anything, which I obviously can't promise him anything. We have to look when we get into the budget and see what we do have. But the school has already got themselves a very low interest loan that they're able to take care of with Huntington. The Huntington bank managers were there. The architects for the facility were there. They spoke about how they can, different things that this would be benefit. It would grow the school. It would grow the community. You look at different communities looking to send their children different places. When you have maybe the best athletic facility in Trumbull County would be a nice selling point. But some of the facilities, one of the things, a multi-purpose building that would be in there that the community could use. Go in there, you could use these buildings. I don't know anybody that has children, grandchildren, or whatever, that either do AAU, do travel volleyball, different baseball and stuff like that, that you're able to rent this out. The same thing with the baseball fields. They would do certain things with the baseball fields to make them open and available, that each field they could make over $100 a day for the, from other communities that would come and use for ours for the tournament. But as I said, we're going to have to look into next month when we do the budget for next year and see what we can do to help out. And that's about it there. And I just, as Mr. Granchi said, I've fielded a lot of calls and a lot of emails and messengers and any other way that people can communicate with me throughout the day. And I thank you for your reaching out to myself and the majority of the individuals, no matter, I know I don't have to agree with what individuals say, but you're very positive about it. You have ideas. That's the nice thing about Newton Falls. You don't just come and say, hey, you're the worst mayor ever. After you say you're the worst mayor ever, you say, here's benefits, here's things that you can do better. And I appreciate that. And that's all I have. Next section, Law Director's report.
I have nothing to report, sir.
Okay, any questions, comments, concerns for the Law Director?
Yes, sir, real quick. Last week, the mayor read a statement by Ms. Sputzer requesting a leave of absence. We haven't heard anything about that, whether it was accepted, whether it was a go, whether it's a no-go, or what. Where does that stand tonight with Ms. Sputzer being here?
She's here because she didn't break any council rules.
I'm just curious about the request for the leave of absence.
Okay.
Is that in effect? Did it not go into effect? Was there never a leave of absence?
My recollection, I have to double check the minutes, they never took a vote. There was a request, so nothing ever really happened other than it was put on the record. There wasn't a leave of absence that was voted upon, and I'm not even sure there's a section that allows for a leave of absence. The methodology that the council must use is within the council rules that indicates when people are absent, you have the right to excuse their absence, or if they don't and they miss 3 in a row, council can immediately take action. There's some other details to that, but that's generally how it is.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, if nobody has anything else for the Law Director, City Manager report?
Yes, I provided my report to each of you. There's a number of things I'd just like to touch on. The census, as you can see from the information that you were given, we are down another 218 in population. We were at 4795, we're down to 4577. So we at this point are still a village. Also, we've begun work on the 2022 budget, and those seems to be going pretty well. We had a staff meeting to go over the budgets, their wish list, things like that with Sean and myself, the interim finance director. I've worked on a number of projects with Mark, the opt-out program, those type things. We have developed a number, I think a lot of people in the public have seen Facebook pages pop up for the electric department and the water departments. Julie has been working with each of those departments to set up Facebook pages so they can post information about anything that's forthcoming, that kind of stuff. The other thing is, for council's knowledge, we have implemented a new payroll system where the employees will be clocking in and clocking out. It's going to be effective, I believe Pam indicated, they'll have it in place by November 1st. There is attached to your packet, Sean has provided some financial information as part of my report that you can review. I've also attached to the back of that, because you'll see that there were a lot of expenditures going back to March, April, that time period. So I've attached just a breakdown by department so you guys can look at that, make it a little bit easier to review and what the numbers, what's accumulated towards that, so you can take a look at that also. And I believe Sean wrote you folks a letter in the back for your review on the financial situation. So if you had any questions, you could get with him. Just so everyone knows, the reason why he's not here in his community, their meetings are the same night as ours. So we have the option in future meetings, if you guys are willing to put his report first, that he could be on the phone to give you financial reports if we did his report first. Their meeting starts at 7 and ours starts at 6, so he has that hour before his meeting if you wanted to get him on the phone to ask him any questions. Okay. And that's all I have.
Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns for the city manager?
I do. May I be addressed,
you have
please?
The floor, Ms. Spetzer.
I would question what is the SIGNE Signy George Dragon? It's on your.
Oh, that's for.
It was a meeting you attended.
Signs for the community. Mm-hmm. Oh. Yes, those are the signs that you see in front of, like, there was a soccer field sign promised, so we did those signs. We've also looked at signs for the building here and some signs throughout the community for possibly next year, like coming in on Route 5, the big signs that welcome signs for the city. I think there are 4 of them in the entranceways. You know, Route 5, 534, I think Warren Road, and I think the other one's out this way, I believe.
Okay, I do have one more comment, and this is so that the public is informed. We did get a position of cash statement attached to the city manager's report.
Yes.
It's not a full-blown financial report, but just judging by the numbers on the ending figures on the cash position. For example, the month of June closed out with $190,071 in the general fund.
Correct.
The month of July closed out with only $78,669. The month of August closed out with $61,585. Do we have any idea where September is closing out at?
Not at this point. I know at this point all the old bills that we know of have been paid. That's why you received this report here. I believe the only thing that has not been paid at this point in time are the roads. the bill for the roads. That invoice has not been paid at this point in time. So they're on target to finalize September, mid-October. By the 15th of October, they should have September closed out, and I think you'll have a better... They did the 3 months that they had, actually May, June, July, and August, 4 months. They went through this very quickly to get you something, get us current, up to date. And I know Sean is still making adjustments in different accounts because there are a lot of accounts that were in the negative. So he has had to shuffle, funds from one to the other. The spending has been excessive. So he's at this point trying to get things in order.
May I have the floor?
You have the floor, Mr. Bryant.
Are you trying to tell me, Mrs. Pretty, that the money to pay for the roads we did was not appropriated?
No, it was not.
Who was on the Finance Committee? Was Mr. Zimmerman on that?
I don't.
Who was on the Finance Committee last year? I don't remember knowing anything about $1 million being drug out of the Treasury Reserve until thank God Mrs. Splitzer here caught it. What are you, Mr. Fritz, are you on the Treasury Investment Board? Are you on that, sir?
Yes.
Why wasn't that brought to council?
Treasury Investment Board meets and makes reports. That's the purpose of that board.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have anything for Ms. Purdy?
Yes, sir.
Give the floor.
I see in here in your expense report, your summary of expenses, that a lot of charges go to team office tech for maintenance and things like that. Can you explain what those are?
If you look at the invoice dates on the team office, a lot of those were prior to. I don't know what occurred and why back in February, March and April, a lot of those bills were not paid. But if you look at the dates on those bills, they are from before.
Are they still being used?
Yes, team office is who the city uses to do all of their computer.
So we're using them in addition to Ms. Miles, we're paying two different IT.
She doesn't do that type of computer work. Team office does any type of internal computer work that needs to be done, like setting up a computer system. Julie is there to help or assist, like the department head, in learning how to use the computer. Like, for example, the street department got a new computer. They needed an updated computer. Team office came in, installed the equipment. Then Julie worked with Harry to get him set up, get his programs transferred from the old computer system to the new computer system.
So team office was unavailable to her, they just refused to do that service?
I don't believe they do that type of service.
Just one last question. It's been now about 6 weeks or so since David Lynch resigned. Can you update us on the status for finding a new city manager? Any committees that have been formed? We heard from the very beginning that committees were going to be formed as far as searching locally, far away for a new city manager. Can you update us on the status of any committees? Let me know any publications that have been notified that we're looking for a new city manager. Any publications at all being made at all?
No, there hasn't been any.
And what's the time frame for starting to publicize this?
I don't have any time frame. Actually, the finance director has indicated that as long as he was here, he would like me to be here with him. But at this point, there's been nothing done as far as...
There's no time frame whatsoever for replacing their city manager?
No, not at this point.
Thank you.
Mrs.
You've had a first.
So let me see if
You've had a
Mr.
first, I've had a first,
Let me
he's had a
see if
first.
Mr. Granchi or Mr. Crop would like a first address.
I want to address, but I need to address the law director instead. So I'll let them, if they want to talk to the city manager, I want to address the law director.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'll go now. I'll take my second now because Mine kind of addresses both. In the memo that we received from Mr. Housley, he indicated to us that the departments that are way over budget, or, well, I'm sorry, not way over, the departments that are over budget, one of them is council, and I don't know why. That I'd like to find out. Why is council over budget? Did somebody go to DC on a private plane?
No.
Wait, no, I'm sorry. Legal is over budget, and I would like Mr. Fritz to explain why the legal department is over their budget.
I can address city council. I'm not sure who asked the question earlier about the legal bills, but we have received legal bills up to approximately $100,000, and that was charged back to city council for those legal bills.
Did you have anything else, Ms. Butzer?
May I have a second real quick?
Yes.
On the Verlay deal, will you be putting a proposal in front of council about what, I don't have anything that we met and we'll be in the development. Do you think we're going to work that out real quick and the council vote on it or what?
I sent the management firm for Verlay in talking with the superintendents about the road dedication. Verlay had agreed to a couple of the items with the wastewater and the street department, but then when we got to the electric department, it was going to be costly even to provide street lighting. So I sent an email to Verlay indicating that we needed to do something with the electric, whether it was shared cost or they had to pay for it. I have not heard back from them yet. So at this point, there's nothing that's going to be sent to council until that's decided.
The other thing about, do we need to pull this, I'd ask the mayor and the law, do we need to pull the meter opt-out tonight until we put something together on this? It's on the agenda, isn't it?
Yes, council has to decide because that was one of the things that I had asked Chuck, how many meters they had already installed, and they're up to 500 already. Council needs to decide whether you're going to extend that opt-out program or you're going to just say it is what it is at this point. Whoever opted out is who's opted out. It's council's decision on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before Mr. Kropp weighs in, I wanted to throw something in there, and this is my own view or my own opinion to council, and Mr. Zimmerman brought it up just so that we're on the same page. I mean, when we look at different situations in the community, probably scratches your head at certain things, and I do too, where we come up with, we have a legal bill that comes in for $100,000, you know. That to me, a community that we're down to 4,500 people, small town. We have all of a sudden bills now for roads that were paved that we budgeted $30,000 for, and I know that what we have done costs way more than $30,000. Many other things taking place. I mean, when you got $60,000 in your total general fund, that's not a good thing. There's a lot of things right now. We had meetings today on different things that are very alarming inside this building and outside of this building. So my own view when it comes time, and Ms. Pretty is the interim city manager, and when you look at an interim position of anything, that's a transition period. That's a period to stop the bleeding. But I would suggest that maybe Ms. Pretty, Mrs. King, and Ms. Smiles, maybe you put together a requirements, you know, for the position. So at some point that it's put out, we decide where we want to get applicants. But and this is my opinion. I'll just throw out here. I don't believe, with all the situations that we have going on, that we are nowhere near bringing a different individual in to bring somebody else into the situations that are being dealt with right now would be like suicide, to get them up to speed to the things that have gone on in this community over the last 2 to 3 years. That's only my opinion I'm throwing out there, but it is something to do things correctly that we should probably get a skeleton of ideas of what you have and move forward, and we'll talk about it. And that's my opinion. Just because you start getting applicants doesn't mean it needs to take an effect. And I do believe that we're going to need to put together a screening committee in the community so that this time that we're able to properly look things over. I don't think that we need to say, okay, we had a city manager, we got an interim, let's fly like our hair's on fire to hurry up and make a move. I think that would really be a unbeneficial thing to do, and it's just my 2 cents. Did you have a second?
I would like to, with all that being said, I would like to address the city manager and ask her professional opinion. You've been here, as Mr. Zimmerman said, you've been here about 6 weeks. When you came in to the position that you now hold as the interim city manager, was everything smooth sailing?
No.
Was everything organized?
No.
Was everything in place that should be in place?
No.
Did you have everything that you needed at your disposal and available to you when you needed it?
No.
Was there any, did you have really anything at your disposal? Was anything explained to you? Did you have anybody to hand things over to you or explain, the situation even with the transition?
No. Kathy has been a help in some instances, but again, she only knows so much of what was happening, and then you just have to try to fill in the blanks from there. Financially, and I'm just going to say this, the city's in trouble financially. I'm not the finance director, but in speaking with him on a daily basis, at this point I am going to tell council, you are over budget, and that's illegal to be over budget. So there's some things that are going to happen quickly. I don't know, and again, this is Sean's call on where the monies are going to have to come from. Whether it is treasury investment again, I don't know. But we've got to make some quick decisions.
When it comes to the city and the position that we are right now, do you think now would be a good time to create another transition and bring in someone completely new again? In your professional opinion, do you think it's a good idea to start that process now? Are we in any position? Are we stable? Are we in any kind of stable situation right now when we talk about finances or moving forward?
If they're as nuts as I am, maybe. No. I would say no, only because every day something new comes up that has to be dealt with. Different situations that are occurring, different things that have happened, different agreements that were made that there's no documents to. So I would have to say no. I don't know that could be transferred that easily.
And when you came in, and again, I'll just for clarity, so the public can understand, when you came in, after we had your predecessor, you came in, what was available to you? What you have, your office, and you have filing cabinets and whatnot, and a city computer and et cetera. What was available to you? What did you have available when you walked in? Was it what you would expect in that situation to have someone that you came in after years of doing service? Was it what you would expect?
No.
Could you give us could you kind of maybe just kind of highlight what the situation kind of looked like when you took over? What was your first week like?
Yeah, the filing cabinets were empty and the computer had been wiped clean.
It's kind of hard to do the job when you don't have things the resources at your disposal. Thank you. This is City Manager. I appreciate it. That's all I have for the City Manager, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Boriak, would say?
I would like to address the law director if I could, if anybody else doesn't have a second.
Okay, let me see if Mr. Zimmerman would like his second address, Mr. Boriak, and then we'll move on to yourself. Mr. Boriak, did you have anything else?
I want everybody in the community to know that we're going to do the best we can, this new council, to be transparent. And whatever happens. So I don't want to be gloom and doom, but there's, like Mrs. Pretty said, there's some real serious, very, very serious situations that have transpired, and we're going to have to deal with them. And I don't want to go any further with it. I just don't want the public to be blindsided here. Thank you.
Mr. Zimmerman, did you need anything for second address?
No, sir.
Okay, Mr. Kropp, you want?
Mr. Fritz, we spoke recently, and in regards to, and a gentleman came up here and spoke, one of the city employees came up and spoke at the last meeting, and I've had people reach out to me and ask me questions in reference to my personal situation when it comes to the item that's on the agenda this evening. But in our discussion, and per our policy, the drug policy that's been brought up and that's on the agenda this evening, are you the designated employee representative for the Village of Newton Falls?
No.
Is Kathy the, do you know if the city clerk is the designated employee representative?
No.
Okay, and are you aware what the drug policy says? That the only person who's able or eligible to authorize the release of confidential drug records, whether it be testing records, all drug records, not just results, all drug records, that the only person who's authorized to do that in specific situations has to be authorized by the designated employee representative that's not you? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
So did you authorize the release of those documents when they were requested?
The public records? Yes.
The drug records, the drug test records. Did you authorize the release of those?
There were no drug test records released.
So the testing results, or when individuals, council members, council staff, et cetera, receive drug tests or whatever, those aren't drug test records? Testing dates, locations, those aren't drug records?
The drug testing records are the results. If we have a list of the persons who took the test, the date they took them, has to be kept as a separate record for purposes of things like paying the company who does the test. We don't know if they did 100 or 200. So that becomes a separate. We redact any specific information and any specific health information, and it can go out the public record.
Mr. Fritz, can you provide me with something that says what you just said, that it just counts as the results, the test results themselves? Can you show me something or give me some kind of illustration or share with the public where you're pulling that from? Where does it say that?
Where does it say what? I don't understand the question.
You just referred to the drug test results.
No, I didn't. No.
You did.
You asked if I would authorize the release of that public record. Mm-hmm. Assuming you're talking about the one where it has the dates of the employees that took a test, and that's all.
Those would be drug test records.
No, those are those.
Let me read. I'll actually read. I actually have the drug policy here, so I'll read it so everybody can hear what's actually what it says. To protect the confidentiality of the employee, all records of drug and alcohol testing, all records. It doesn't say testing results. It says all records. So anytime somebody took a test, where they took it, those would be considered drug records. Those would be all records. So let me continue. All records of drug and alcohol testing will be stored separate and apart from employees' general personnel documents. Access to these records shall be limited to designated company officials. The information contained in these files shall be utilized only to properly administer the policy and to provide to auditing and certifying agencies for review, as may be required. Those designated company officials shall have access to these records are charged of the responsibility of maintaining confidentiality of those records. Any breach of confidentiality with regard to said records will be a terminable offense. Any employee tested under this policy has the right to review and or receive a copy of their test results on file with the employer. At the beginning of that drug policy, sir, it says very clearly the only person able to authorize the release of any confidential records is a designated employee representative. You have already declared that you are not the designated employee representative.
That's correct.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. We're going to move on to changes to tonight's agenda. I don't believe there's any changes to the agenda. So approval of previous minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the September 20th, 2021 regular meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the approval of the minutes? Okay, if not, if Mrs. King could call for the roll.
Bariak.
Yes.
Crop.
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Abstain.
Spletzer.
Abstain.
Granchi.
Yes.
Okay, minutes approved. Public hearings, we have none. Unfinished business, number one is ordinance 2021-13, if Mrs. King could read it, or never mind, that's tabled until 11:15, yes.
Number 2, Resolution 25-2021, if Mrs. King could read that.
A resolution to cancel the smart meter form and rate previously set by the village manager.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, do we have a second? Second. Okay, any discussion?
I would like to begin by saying that, this is something that I knew back when the previous city manager created the opt-out rate and the opt-out form, that he was well outside the bounds of his authority and power. So I'd like to know from Mr. Fritz, is this something that if, should we put, well, it's on the table now. Now it's being discussed. Should we vote on this and do away with it and then create what we discussed in caucus tonight? Create just a new form?
It's tied up to council, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? I mean, Ms. Spletzer, what did you hope to accomplish now? Hold on for a second, Mr. Bark. What did you want to accomplish? You wanted to do something according to what was in the caucus?
I think that if there are more people that want to, I was one of the people that in the beginning I wanted to opt out because I didn't like the way the whole program got shoved down our throats.
Okay.
But I didn't sign up to opt out because I didn't like the price that we were going to have to pay to do that either. So now that I know that there's a more reasonable situation in place, I would like some more time to think about that as a homeowner and decide whether it's really something that's that important to me or, I would personally like a little more time as a homeowner to make a decision.
Originally, this was your legislation.
It was,
correct?
yes.
I mean, you could always pull it off the table, and we could add to the agenda something different at the end of new business, Mr. Barrett.
Oh.
Can't we vote it down?
Just withdraw.
Wouldn't that be the way to do this? To get rid of this, a resolution to cancel the smart meter form and previously set by the city manager? Can we vote it and then put something else together? Or you don't have to vote it, correct? She sponsored it. Ms. Spletzer could just pull it off the table, correct?
You can remove it at this stage, yes.
Okay, so I can pull it off the table.
It's on the table.
Oh.
Once you get on the table, you got to deal with it. If you wish to remove it, you have to go through steps to remove it or retable the matter. And then if you retable, then you can remove it the next time before it actually gets brought off. So maybe the easiest methodology, if you want to have this off of our agenda, but you can put something else on a later date, just vote it down, if you get the votes to do that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. If we were to vote this down, wouldn't that lead to the current smart meter form and rate?
Correct.
It would stay in place. If we pass this, then we could potentially create our new opt-out policy, essentially what we discussed in caucus.
The reason I hesitate to answer is because council needs to make a decision on this, and I can't guess what the vote's going to be. So as it stands now, it's on the table. You have your discussion, and you vote on the matter. There's no good way to remove it at this stage. And if it gets voted and turned down, you can't come back in the same exact form during the session. Meaning you have to be making more specific modifications, something of a significant change in circumstances in order to bring it back up. You can't bring up the same resolutions and ordinances over and over again if they're voted down.
Okay, this I would like to address. This was put on the agenda as a resolution. If it is voted down tonight, it can come back on the next agenda with a new form and a new rate as an ordinance.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We need to pass this tonight, though, if we're going to do that, correct?
Huh? No.
To cancel the smart meter form and rate that previously set by the village manager? We don't want to have two conflicting forms. We don't have two. If we, you understand what I'm saying? This was a resolution to cancel the previous smart meter form and the opt-out, to cancel that form so we could create the one that we just discussed and bring that to the people. That was, am I misunderstanding something? Wasn't that the design of everything that we discussed? This resolution is to cancel the previous smart meter form.
It was a resolution to cancel what,
Right, which is what we want to do because we've discussed this at length about the new opt-out. And I think we'll have to vote to approve that new form.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we want to remove this form. So it doesn't make any sense to pull it or vote it down, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, because you're going to redo it with number 9 of the new business, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah, so if you pass this, it does away with old, and number 9 gives you opportunity for new.
okay, so
All right, so Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Granchi, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, just real quick, we heard tonight from a couple of our superintendents that there shouldn't even be an opt-out tonight. I don't want to pretend to be smarter than them in their analysis of things, so that's the way I'm looking at it.
Is that all you have?
Yes.
Okay, anybody else before you go ahead and vote?
You have to take it from the table first.
I'd like to ask a question. In other words, we want to vote yes to cancel this, but then we can reset it. Is that, if I vote yes,
A yes gets rid of the old, and then under new business number 9, you'll be able to set something to move forward. Okay? Anybody else before we go ahead and call for the roll? Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Crop.
Aye.
Zimmerman.
No.
Spletzer.
yes.
Granchi.
Yes.
Bariak.
yes.
Okay, passes. All right. Okay, number 3, if Mrs. King could read the motion.
Motion to discuss a donation to the school for the proposed sports complex.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Just for discussion, I'm going to make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
Mayor, I'd like to,
We got to vote on that motion, don't we, though, to discuss
we
it?
have, I'm sorry.
We have to vote on that motion to discuss it.
All right, yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Zimmerman.
Yes.
Spletzer.
Yes.
Granchi.
Yes.
Bariak.
Yes.
Crop.
Aye.
Okay.
Could I have the floor,
You
Mayor?
have the floor, Mr. Barrett.
In light of what's coming to bear, I think we ought to table this till we know what kind of money we have. To even make a offer, I don't know what kind of money we have. And I think that would be putting the cart before the horse if we can want to be even thinking about giving some money. Can't we table this till...
Right now, we're not going to make any decision. This is just to give each of you an opportunity to come up with ideas, talk a little bit. We don't need to be honest with you. I talked to the superintendent today. What I got out of it, there was a banker there from Huntington. They already received a very low interest loan for over $3 million. They're moving forward. They're not making and this is for 10 years, and they're not making a payment until December of 2022. So they're not making a payment for 13, 14 months. So we don't have to. The only thing I promised them is that we would pay the full amount for 2021, which is nothing. You know, they're not paying a payment. I said, other than that, I said, I would love to partner with you because he had a great plan, and I would love to have him even come back here again sometime. But we can't do anything until we sit down and we look at our budget.
Right.
I don't know if we're bleeding, if we're hemorrhaging, or if we're dead right now. So I can't go off and, you know what I mean? You can ask my wife. I have a budget in my room of every 8 weeks that I'm constantly, so I know where we're at financially in my own household. So I would never say, hey, let's use somebody else's money in a different way than I do. I would never go and tell them, hey, you know what? I think that we should do this, $5,000. I think we should give you $50,000. No, we have to see where we're at. You know, and that's the only thing I promised to us is, you know, I think it'd be a great opportunity, but I've joked with this before. My family, we like steak and stuff like that, but, you know, 4th of July come and we were eating hot dogs and hamburgers because we can't afford steak, even though we like it. So maybe here we like this big sports complex, it looks good and stuff like that, but this ain't necessarily Aurora, so I don't know if we can afford it. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, how do you want to handle this, Mayor?
We're
already discussing it.
Yeah, we're
already discussing it.
We're discussing it, and he's going to have other meetings, and he was looking for heads of committees, and I told him I'm not going to be the head of any committee because I don't want to be doing this for the city, doing this for the school. I'll come and listen if he wants to fundraise, and if he wants to go and look at other places and do this and that, but we have to see where we're at financially. And after we see, this is, like I said, over a 10-year period, there's, things that we would get back in return. We wouldn't just be giving money either. I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail on that right now, but that's, I don't know if anybody else has anything. I mean, I can answer even any questions of what I know,
Mr. Chairman, just if I may.
Sure.
Just briefly, just to touch on basically what you said, and to kind of piggyback off what John said. I really think, first of all, it's good to hear that the school's already moving forward and doing, they're not waiting on anybody, they're just going to go ahead and do it. So that's good to hear. We have to get our house in order first before we can start, thinking about, even really having a legitimate discussion about trying to offer funds in any way, shape, or form, which, that may be a couple months before we can even consider something like that, just trying to figure out where we are and, what our revenue stream looks like and where we are with finances. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Well, I was thankful that Rocco didn't come and try to twist my arm and throw, he had a big room of all the coaches and stuff, and to try to do that he let us know, myself and city manager, that they're not even paying one payment for 14 more months, so. So we'd like to do what we can, because I do know that with a good school system and it growing, that we're losing people here, that I believe that we can bring citizens to our community with a nice facility like that. But if you don't have the money to give, then you don't have the money to give. We have to keep the lights on and stuff and pay for our roads and stuff first. But Mr. Zimmerman, do you have anything? Mr. Granchi?
Yes, sir. Like Mr. Bariak said, I'm kind of concerned about where money's going to be coming from for this. That's my first thought and foremost. We've been hearing tonight how we might not even be able to pay for our road repairs. And we're looking at giving extra money to the school. I'd like to see where that could come from. It's easy for a town to rally around sports. Sports is the one thing that shows huge for cities, for villages, for organizations. But also I would like to see where possibly we could help out maybe other areas as far as books, clubs, organizations. There's other things behind a school other than just the sports team. And we need to build on that structure as well as the sports. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Granchi, you have anything?
No, I just...
Okay, with it being motion, I don't know how we close this off because we're not
Just
looking to
move to
make
the
any...
next item.
Okay, we'll move to the next item then, and that's new business. Number one under new business is ordinance 2021-19. If Mrs. King could read that.
An ordinance establishing an annual cost of living adjustment for all hourly city employees.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is that Mr. Granchi? Was that you that made the motion? Okay.
I'm sorry, who made those motions?
Mr. Granchi.
Who seconded?
We don't have one
Oh,
yet.
sorry.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, that's Mr. Kropp. Do you want to, Mr. Granchi, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to table this for now. Last meeting that we had, it said that it looked like finances were getting better. It seemed like it was a good time to put in a minimal impact, financially high impact for morale and for everything else. But now's not the time to do this if we're heading in that kind of direction. So I'd like to motion to table this.
Okay, do you have a date that you want to table it for? Or?
First meeting of 2022.
Okay.
We need a second and vote to table it.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Could I ever get a chance to address it?
He already moved it. He moved to table.
Yeah, he moved to table it, John. Yeah, she
Well,
moved to second.
then I can't do it.
Is that, Mr. Chairman, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Mr. Fritz, that doesn't, if someone requests a table that makes a motion to table, does that limit the ability to discuss, even though it was already, okay.
It's on the floor. It's not discussion on the tabling itself. So while the tabling's on the floor,
Okay, thank you.
let's go to the vote on the tabling.
Okay, so we need to, Any discussion on tabling?
Can't discuss tabling.
I just want to make sure I heard it right. What I heard was Mr. Granchi said he would like to table this till the first meeting of 2022?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is that an organizational meeting?
It's okay, we do the organizational
Okay.
part, and then we do
Okay.
the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
All right, so whenever Mrs. King is ready, she can call for the roll.
Splitzer,
Yes.
Granchi,
Yes.
Bariak,
Yes.
Crop,
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Yes.
Okay, table until the first meeting of January. Business number 2 is ordinance 2021-20.
An ordinance amending ordinance 2021-39, repealing the sewer rates enacted in the 2021 budget appropriations.
Okay, do we have a motion? Okay, if we don't have a motion here, then it's going to end up being pulled. All right. Okay, so it dies then. Number 3, resolution 32-2021.
A resolution authorizing the City of Newton Falls to dispose of unneeded equipment/property by sale to employees, public auction, on internet auction, or salvage pursuant to Section 721.15 of the revised code.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Make that,
Wait a minute. What happened to number 5? Didn't,
Number 5.
We're on number 3.
You mean we're on number 3 under new business. You mean number 2 under new business?
okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I wrote my notes next to the wrong one, so like, my apologies.
It's all right. Mr. Crop made the motion, correct?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
second,
Okay, Mr. Bariak, any discussion?
could we tell the people, it's in my pack, could we tell the people what we're auctioning off?
If you'd like, John, I actually have the...
Well, go ahead and do it.
You want me to read? I'll just read
Yeah,
the...
go
I'll
ahead
read
and
the-
do
I'll read
it.
the
You did
ordinance.
it. It's
Okay.
yours.
The City of Newton Falls, this is the actual ordinance. I'll read the entire ordinance, Kathy, unless you'd like to.
It's up to you.
I'll go ahead and read it since John already brought it up. Whereas the City of Newton Falls has accumulated various pieces of equipment and/or property that are no longer needed for municipal purposes, and whereas Section 721.15 of the revised code requires that property valued in excess of $1,000 be sold to the highest bidder, highest and best bidder, and whereas the City of Newton Falls desires to dispose of the unneeded equipment property, and also desires to advertise the sale of the property on internet auction. The Council for City of Newton Falls, State of Ohio hereby resolves, Section 1, City Council authorizes the city manager to inventory all unneeded equipment and/or property to identify those items to be auctioned by the city. Items to be sold are listed on the attached Exhibit A, which I believe I have as well, and I'll go over that. Section 2 is City Council authorizes the city manager to advertise the date and time of the auction once per week for at least 2 consecutive weeks in accordance with the revised code 721-15, and authorizes the city to conduct an auction to dispose of the unneeded equipment and/or property. The city manager shall also advertise the availability of items for bid on the internet auction for at least 2 consecutive weeks and on the city access channel. Section 3, City Council authorizes the city manager to determine that equipment and/or property is not needed for public use or is obsolete or unfit for the use for which it was acquired, and if the property has no value, may discard or salvage that property. We have a list. There's a resolution here with the exhibit that it mentioned. It's a 2003 Ford F-150 with a VIN number, 469, I believe that's kilovolt. It's kV, so 69 kilovolt breakers. This is electric. 200 street lights, which is from the electric department, I believe, and a 4160 kilovolt switch gear, which is electric. So these are the items that are listed as far as disposal. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, if there's no other discussion, if Mrs. King wants to go ahead and call for the roll.
Granchi,
Yes.
Bariak,
Yes.
Crop,
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Yes.
Splitzer.
Yes.
All right, passes. Okay.
I'm sorry, Mayor. My apologies, please. Was item number 2 the one that didn't get a first or a second?
Yeah, the sewer.
Okay, that is, I apologize. I've been writing some notes in here, and I skipped down to the wrong gap, so that's my bad. And by the way, since I'm bringing it up, I do need to discuss it, because when I submitted this to the clerk, I submitted this as a resolution. Nobody ever called me. Nobody said, maybe that needs to be an ordinance. No, nothing. I submitted it to the clerk on Wednesday at 2:48 in the afternoon. I get an agenda packet on Friday and it comes out as an ordinance. No call, Mr. Fritz. Nothing from you, Mrs. King.
Mrs. Spletzer, are you saying that you want it put back on, or?
I have a problem with this.
Okay.
First of all, I want to know, why did it go from me sending an email to the clerk saying I would like this as a resolution,
Okay.
and that it shows up in the packet
Okay.
as an ordinance?
Mr. Fritz.
Mr.
if
Fritz,
you
I
could
would like an answer, please.
Weigh in on the process there.
I'm looking for the email, sir, if you give me just a moment.
Okay.
I sent it Wednesday at 2:48 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, if I may have
It
the floor for a
says,
second.
Kathy, I would like to have a resolution to repeal the sewer rate on the agenda for 10/4/21.
Please repeat that.
I would like to have a resolution.
That's it.
Okay.
That's the word I said, a resolution.
I'm assuming you didn't want to just repeal all the sewer rates so that we weren't paying for sewers anymore. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, if I do exactly what you put in here, we would have removed every sewer rate out there. So what we do is we get this information from council. One of our jobs is to put it in proper forms, and we made it as because we have a rate set, it should be by ordinance, and we assumed you didn't want to just give everybody free sewer.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Sure.
Mr. Fritz, we've gone back and forth with legislation, submitting legislation, and then having, basically a final approval. I'm just curious as to why there was never any kind of assumption should never be made. I think is probably the thing to be taken from this. You shouldn't assume, and she should have been reached out to, and that seems like an issue. There's a breakdown in the communication. She should have been able to authorize the final draft or final verbiage of whatever legislation she submitted. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Well, at this point right here,
You can't amend a resolution with an ordinance. Rates are set by ordinance. A resolution wouldn't have done it.
Well, rates shouldn't have been stuck in a budget on page 379 or
Budget that was passed by
378.
ordinance.
okay. Well, that would be discussion on the item. Would we be able to add to the agenda right now, like we would if we were on that section, and have Ms. Spletzer add to the agenda what she would like to have at the end of new business?
Can I just make a statement, Tessa? Just so you know, I can't tell when the thing's on. Just so you know, before you guys go backwards on this, I did have a lengthy conversation with Mike Novotny and about the wastewater rates. And at this point, they did their rate study, which cost them between $20,000 and $25,000 to do. The last increase in the sewer rates was 2015. If you repeal these increased sewer rates at this point in time, he will not be able to make his debt payment March 1st, and that debt payment is about $420,000. So he will not be able to make that debt payment. And just so you know, is that I have been working with Mike also. This was another issue that came up, is that we have an opportunity, I'm not sure why it wasn't done before, but to refinance the wastewater treatment plant, which I have been speaking with the gentleman to be able to do that refinancing. He has a debt on that facility of about $5.7 million. And at this point in time, the interest rate we can get is like 1.5%. It's currently at 4.37%, which would equate to a savings of about $163,000 for that department if we're able to get the refinancing done of that wastewater treatment plant. So I just want you to consider that before you guys proceed with that, is because if we fault on that debt payment, I'm not sure, Joe, what would happen if we default on that debt payment, but he will not be able to make that debt payment
Mayor,
come March 1st.
I don't know how to, could I ask for the floor for a second?
Okay, well, first off, we don't have anything on the floor to discuss right now.
Right, that's what I'm
Do we
saying.
need to add to this, or do we need to just do nothing with it right now and proceed to number 4? What would you like to do, Ms. Blitzer? It's pretty much in your corner here.
I will say this, and thank you for addressing me. I noticed it when my utility bill showed up, and I looked at it and I said, oh my goodness, I paid more for the sewage than I actually paid for the water that I used. So I called Andrea in the utility office, and she told me that she was told to institute the sewage rate. And I knew that that number was in the budget on page 379, because it was tucked down under the other actual budgetary items. So I finished with Andrea, and then I called you, and I said, you know, I didn't know. I did not know where he came up with that number. I didn't know how it got there. I still don't think the way that he went about it was the correct way, because he stuck it in something called a 2021 budget, and that budget has its own ordinance number. That ordinance number is 2020-39. This sewage rate increase did not get its own ordinance number.
Correct. I'm not saying it was done properly by any means. I'm not here to determine that. Kathy, were these given to them? The wastewater?
Wastewater one?
Yeah.
I'm probably the one that has one.
What's that?
So I'm probably the one
I got
that
something that was red.
No, that was the water treatment plant.
We
But
didn't get wastewater.
we can get you a copy of the wastewater one, the study that was done. Those rates were supposed to go into effect January 1.
And that's another thing that bothered me about this whole situation.
Right.
They were supposed to go into effect January 1 of 2021.
Correct.
Why did it not happen until September?
Okay, well, we need to either add something to the agenda, because people are weighing in and stuff like that. I know Mr. Boriak wants comments, so we need to figure out if we want to do something with the sewer rates that were budgeted, or if we're just going to leave it off the table for right now. Okay, if not, then we'll just move on to number 4.
We're moving, okay. You know what, I'm fine with just leaving it die. I'll get that wastewater treatment plant.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, number 4 is Resolution 33-2021.
A resolution submitting to the electors a proposed amendment to the Newton Falls City Charter in reference to Article 11 Charter Review.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Crop, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Granchi. Any discussion?
Yeah, I put this on here because the biggest complaint that I get from everyone I talk to essentially is issues with the charter, whether it be convoluted, whether it be confusing, whether it be counterproductive of each other, whether it be clashing with each other, with parts inside of it. As of now, we look at this every 5 years, and something that could be important to someone else, something someone runs on changing something, there's a possibility that somebody can run on saying they're going to change something and then never have even have the opportunity to do so, because our terms are only for 4 years. This isn't saying that we're going to change the charter every 2 years. It's just giving the ability to the Charter Review Board to do this. So that's why I wrote this, and that's why I'm supporting it.
Mayor,
Mr. Boyer?
from what I've known since I've been on council, I do know that 4 of us voting can put something on the next election without having to go to charter review. I'm not against a charter review, but I'd like to maybe make an amendment to amend this resolution to 3 or 4 years. If you would agree with that, Mr. Branchy, would that be in your realm of possibility?
I'd be open to 3 years, but I'd like the idea of doing it biannually. That way, things can stay fresh in our mind of small inconsistencies that might only have come up once, but could absolutely come up again. We've seen it time and time again that it's convoluted in some spots, and just having the opportunity to clean it up more often than every 5 years or twice a decade just makes sense to me.
I just...
Yeah, you still have the floor, Mr. Boriak.
Mr. Branchy, I just feel, and if I'm being presumptuous, I'm just feeling it's something that's that dire to change the charter, we would have to go to the electors anyhow. I figured that we could come together and get it on the ballot. We had problems before getting, and I hope we don't have any now down the road, getting people to even want to get on the Charter Review Board. Mr. Fedorov, I wish he was still here. He would. I'll leave it up to the council.
Okay.
If you're the one that sponsors it, whatever you're talking about, I'll either vote it up or down.
Mr. Chairman, if I have the floor.
Mr. Kropp, you have the floor.
I fully support this. I think this is a great idea, and I think the reason why is the fact that every 2 years you're basically having a changeover potentially with council, so these people would have opportunities to address if they have fresh ideas. But the main issue and the main thing that I think we've seen is the ambiguities in our charter, or the conflicts between different sections. Things need to be addressed. And ultimately, no matter what we propose or what council would propose or what the review board would propose to council to approve or whatever, is going to be brought to the people. The people are ultimately going to have a choice whether to approve that language. But I don't think there's anybody up here that would argue that our charter is like Swiss cheese. It has so many issues and holes and conflicts. There has to be clarifications, in my opinion, and I think this is long overdue. I think this needs to be done. And hopefully, as Mr. Boriak alluded to, hopefully we can get people that want to participate in the charter review process so that we can present, quality language that will protect, the interests of the village and the individuals that aren't up here right now that will eventually be up here when we're all gone and it's a new, you got fresh people up here, that they have a clean charter to use and utilize, and there's no conflicts between one section and another. And that's been a lot of problems over the last several years. Anybody's been paying attention, the charter's been one of the main issues. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
Yes.
I agree with Mr. Boriak that I think every 3 years would be an adequate amount, and I would like to address Mr. Fritz and ask him, where can we put in Mr. Fedorov's suggestion of the verbatim? Because as someone who sat on a committee and worked, to have something come to council and have it watered down, so to say, or, where can we add the words verbatim from the committee into this resolution? I'm asking you, Mr. Fritz.
Mr. Mayor, may I answer?
Yes.
It doesn't matter what you put in, the Board of Elections does their modification based upon many of the limitations that they have. So even when you put in verbatim, I don't think you're going to get things verbatim. When the Board of Elections has the language for the ballot, they usually send it to the city for review. That's about 6 weeks before. About 6 weeks before. We can maybe have it it's a turnover. They want an immediate turnover. If you want to schedule a special meeting when that comes up, and then council can look at it and review it. Or I don't. There's no good mechanism to provide what you're asking for. If you put in the word verbatim, it's not going to change much, because the Board of Elections sends their stuff off for language modification, and they have limitations on what space can be in there. When we do sections, we can't do red outs and cross outs. They have to do different things on the ballot. So I don't have a good answer for it. There's no good mechanism.
Mayor.
Okay.
Mayor.
Wait a minute. She's just.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Let me see. Mr. Zimmerman, would you like to first address before somebody else a second?
Yes, sir. I feel that a review is always necessary. Things change. People need to be able to change things. Just my question is that if we shorten the review from 5 years to 2 years, how can we truly evaluate the effectiveness of something in 2 years? That is my question. If, like Mr. Bariak said, if we feel so strongly about getting something on the ballot, if the people want to get something on the ballot, if we want to get something on the ballot, we have the ability to do so pretty much at any election based on votes up here. So if we feel that strongly about a change, we can get it taken care of. I just don't want to see people rashly trying to change. I don't like the way this sounded, or this has been in effect for 2 years, and we're not quite sure how this is going to go yet. I would still like, just like I said, just how long does it take to truly figure out how effective something is? Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Bariak, you want a second address?
I just think that I do agree with Mr. Zimmerman. Some of this stuff may never come up, only one time. But I'm just saying that we do have the ability to add what we want at any time. And if you understand the charter review, the committee may come up with 8 or 10 proposals. This is what's been wrong before. And then we had to limit it down to maybe 3 or 4 because the people on the ballot would get too many on there and they wouldn't know what they're doing. So we always had to go to the wish list was 8 or 9, came out of the committee. But then the 4, everybody had to go in and pick your top 4. So I'm willing to, Mr. Branchy sponsored it. I'd like to make the amendment, but if he could live with 3 years, if not, I'm not going to bust him up.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may. First of all, I'm open to 2 or 3 years. Mr. Zimmerman, to your point, as far as evaluating the effectiveness of changes that are passed, you're not necessarily going to be changing the same thing over and over again. In fact, the entire point would be to not change the same thing over and over again. So the frequency for, and at least in that matter, doesn't really matter, because if we change something, just some arbitrary verbiage, we don't have to come back to it the next time we do a charter review. If it works, it works. We just let it sit. And then if 4, 6 years down the road it comes back up, then we can address it then. But I don't think the frequency is that big of a deal as far as determining the effectiveness of new verbiage. That's all.
Okay, anybody else want a second address? Okay, if not,
Have we amended it yet?
no.
I'd like to make an amendment that we do it every 3 years.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on that?
I'm open to that.
Okay. So we're going to vote on amending it, and then we'll vote on the actual, okay. So if Mrs. King could call for the roll on amending.
Bariak?
Yes.
Crop?
Aye.
Zimmerman?
Abstain.
Swetzer?
Yes.
Granchi?
Yes.
Okay, amended to say every 3 years. Okay, so do we have to make a motion to put it on the table?
So moved.
Okay, it's
Yeah,
on the
it's
table
already
then?
It's already on the
Oh, that's
table.
right.
as
Yeah,
amended.
It's on the
Thank you.
table
Sorry.
for 3 years, and I don't know if we need any more discussion on it, or if you want to just go and call for the roll.
Mr. Chairman, one quick thing to point out. Mr. Granchi, would this have any effect, or would you like to change effective dates or anything along those lines as far as the actual language in the?
No, it would have to go to the voters anyway. It can't go on. It would have to start in 2023 because it wouldn't be on the election until the 2022 election.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. If no other discussion, whenever Mrs. King is ready to call for the roll.
Crop?
Aye.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Splitzer?
Yes.
Franchi?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay. Number 5 is,
Motion to discuss and/or authorize costs associated with broadcasting the Newton Falls High School basketball games.
okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, if there's no motion, then it will be pulled off the table. Okay, number 6.
Mr. Mayor, are you withdrawing that motion, or did it just die with?
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll die
You
without-
said pull, I just want to
yeah,
make sure I'm
without a
clarifying.
second, it's
Okay, so it was a dead motion.
dead.
Thank you.
Okay, that's where you locked me, okay. Are you pulling it?
I'm not
Yeah,
pulling it, I didn't.
he said the word pull, and
Yeah,
that's why I just wanted to clarify. It's just a
yeah.
dead motion. Yeah, it's just a dead motion.
It's a dead motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 6, the motion to authorize the city manager to accept RFQs to hire a consultant/engineer for dam inspections.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes. Mayor, I was driving around town, and I think a couple people from the state, did they contact you, Mrs. Pretty?
Yes, they did.
Would you fill us in on what you know about something?
Well, ODNR called and asked if we had our dam inspection report, which obviously we didn't. And I went around asking who's in charge of the dams because, nobody knew that there was supposed to be an inspection. But Jeff from the water plant had said that there was one done a number of years ago. And what ODNR expects is this document completed with the inspection of the dam. And it actually takes an engineer to do this. They go in, look under the dam, check for leaks. They check the spillways, all that different type of stuff, the lake drain valves. They check to make sure there's proper vegetation, erosion, that type of stuff. Not something a city employee could do. So we're supposed to, I think the last dam inspection that was done was maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. So ODNR is requiring that we have an inspection done. They were out there inspecting the dam, but they would like this maintenance manual completed. So, again, that takes an engineer to do that.
Good. Could I ask, are we responsible if it's unsafe because I know we get our water from upstream, and I don't know if that would affect it or not. None of the water people are here to ask the question. Everybody left. But would we be responsible? I do know that the dam at Commerce Parks has a lot more bad spots than the one uptown. That's what I was told. I talked to those people.
I don't know from this point in time, John, until after they do the inspection, if we're responsible for anything. My understanding is that the Army Corps of Engineers may be responsible.
Oh, great.
So it just depends on what the damage is or, that kind of stuff. So
thank you very much.
you won't know that till after you do the inspection.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. Do we have any, and this is, I think it's probably a rhetorical question, do we have any idea what the cost of something like this is?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
But it's essentially we're kind of required. We really don't have a choice. We kind of have to do it no matter what.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brady.
Anybody else?
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, if not, if Mrs. King could call for the roll.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Splitzer?
Yes.
Franchi?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Cruppen?
Aye.
Okay, passes. Okay, number 7, if Ms. King could read.
Motion to hold Mr. Kropp in contempt of council and orally sanction him for violation of council rule section 7, number 10 for his first violation.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Bariak, any discussion?
Yeah, if I may.
You have the floor, Mr. Granchi.
My question would be to Mr. Fritz. Were you able to look at the Supreme Court ruling? I could not find any of the dissertations or anything from the justices. I don't have access to LexisNexis or anything like that, where that does it apply to us in Ohio? And if it does, would that make the entire ordinance requiring a drug test an illegal ordinance?
I've not gone to the case law that you're talking about. I'm not sure what case that you're referring to.
Okay. It was, I believe, in Alabama or something, somewhere. Georgia. It was in Georgia in 1997. However, I don't, like I said, I can't find what the justices wrote up about it. Is there? Obviously, you have not looked at it, but is that something that you would have access to?
Yes. Well, I believe so. Our Westlaw contract does give us some limitations. If it's a federal court out of Alabama, we should be able to get access to it.
Georgia.
Is that something that you would be open to sending to me so I could make the correct decision here? Because I don't want to go against something that was proven in federal court to be constitutionally conflicting.
Any citation for that, sir?
Sorry?
Any citation for that? Any more information other than Alabama's federal court?
Georgia.
I erroneously said Alabama. I looked it up at one point. You can come back to me. I'll get it for you.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes.
Mr. Boriak, you have the floor.
When I first got on council, I put this, what do we call it?
Ordinance.
Ordinance to have the elected officials drug tested. The reason I did this is because I lead by example. And I wouldn't ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. I personally like Mr. Crop. As a matter of fact, he and I talked about it. I asked him if I could get down on my hands and knees, would he consider taking a drug test? I know he's not on drugs. He said, it's principle, John. You don't know how hard this is for me to want to hurt one of my fellow councilmen. But I do feel when I have people come up to me and say, and there's been a couple city employees and say, we're not taking a drug test either. For the amount of negativity and bumping heads, what I call, you know, I would take the test, but I'm not Mr. Crop. But I would like to do what Mr. Granchi says. I would put a motion on tonight that we get a legal opinion. Although Mr. Fritz was here when I passed the ordinance and said it was legal. When I passed it, there was nothing wrong with it. But I would put a motion to table this until Mr. Fritz looks this up and makes sure I know how to vote. That's how strongly I feel about our...
Mr. Fritz.
I'm between a rock and a hard place. You understand?
Is that all you have, Mr. Boriak?
That's all.
Okay, Ms. Spletzer, Mr. Crop, Mr. Zimmerman. Anybody have anything on this?
I do, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. In regards to this, I've had several people ask me about my position, and I want people to understand something. First of all, I was appointed on July 4th. I was sworn in on July 5th, and Kathy can attest to this. I didn't physically receive a copy of anything from this village in a form of a policy or, you know, from what employees get. And there's not really a protocol or process, and that's part of we discussed this earlier as far as things just kind of being willy-nilly in town as far as nothing, no organized process or you know, transition type things. There's just nothing in place. So I didn't receive anything. I was already a sworn-in council person before I had an opportunity to read a physical copy of our employee policy. And if anybody actually reads the policy as it states, the discipline section is the section that is on council. It's council's responsibility. It's not an administrative issue. So when it comes to, an employee came up here and spoke at the last meeting, and I've had several people reach out, and I'm aware that people have made, comments or claims that they don't feel they want to take drug tests or whatever, and that's their prerogative. But as far as the policy is concerned, it's very clear how it works out, and council's prerogative to reprimand or do whatever they want. Council disciplines their own. So, and I accept that. But I am a man of principle, and I've said this before, and I've told, anybody that will listen to me, I've given them my explanation for this situation, and I'm okay with whatever council chooses to do is up to council, and I respect council's decision. But as I said, I am a man of principle, and I'm going to hold my ground when it comes to this, and I don't apologize for it. I've been open and honest and transparent with anybody that's asked me about this. I've been able to tell them exactly what the situation is and clear up the ordinance, clear up the policy and the issues with the policy. And I have issues with the fact that this was even brought up. Again, I addressed this earlier with Mr. Fritz. So I just want the public to understand that this whole concept of, I knew long before I ever walked in here and became a council member that there's these rules in place, or these, I'm just better than everybody else, or I'm different, I'm entitled, or something along those lines. That's all ridiculous. I'm a man of principle, and I have no problem saying that and stating that. And again, council has the right and the authority to do whatever they choose to do as far as a reprimand is concerned, and I will honor that. I'll respect that. It is what it is. I just want to make sure that the public and my colleagues and everybody in town understands that. I just want to be very clear about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Zimmerman, Ms. Bledsoe.
I haven't had a first yet. Yes, I'd like to have a first. Mr. Kropp, I can understand your position, and I commend you for standing on your principles. Because I, too, also do not agree with the way that this policy is written or the way the previous city manager went about imposing it. I, for one, when I picked up my certificate from the Board of Elections on November 18th and got sworn in on November 18th, picked up paperwork from Kathy and the finance director on November 18th, I personally went and had my employment check done, and that was good. However, I have a big problem when the city manager summons me at 10 o'clock at night on Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving, and says, get to the building. And I did. I came. I hadn't had time. As a matter of fact, I never even received an employee handbook until, I don't know, sometime in April. But that's water under the dam. I think the entire policy, as far as it concerns council, needs to be looked at.
Is that all you have, Ms.
I'm
Bledsoe?
done.
Okay, Mr. Zimmerman, do you have anything?
Yes. As a member of council, I would not begin to think that I am higher or above anything you want to say about any other city employee in this great village that we have. I would not ask anybody to do what I wouldn't be prepared to do myself. A drug test is mandatory in order to take a position. It's written, it's been passed by council. We require it of every new hire here in the village. Why would anyone expect council to be different? Thank you.
Okay, before you weigh in, Mr. Boyack, I'm just going to throw my 2 cents in here. Obviously, I think Mr. Kropp does a really, really good job as a councilman. Fact of the matter is, and I talked to him about this, that myself, more than anybody, the illustration I used with him was I told my children, when you go out on the ball field, you have my name on the back of your jersey. You represent me. I appointed you. So the things that you do, it goes down with me. I look at the way that our policy is written. I look at the way that it is handled, the way that it is administrated and stuff, and I don't agree with a lot of the stuff on it. But as mayor and council, that is a different issue. The issue that, for myself, as soon as I found out that it hasn't been taken care of, not on July 4th, not on July 5th, whatever, but after the fact, as soon as I found out, that's why I text Mr. Kropp, that's why I called Mr. Fritz, asked, said, hey, what takes place here? and urged to say, let's get this squared away. Let's get this squared away, because the only thing that pertains here right now as mayor and council is not what they did in Alabama or Georgia or Florida or Arkansas or what Mr. Lynch did or what Ms. Purdy did, but the fact of the matter is in 2017 that the council rules were amended by a unanimous decision, 5-0 vote, that we would take a drug screen, and that's rule number 10 of council, and we are to follow council rules. We're to follow the rules. And the fact of the matter is, if we're not following rules as was put in here, it would be a first violation of council rules, punishable by, contempt of council, orally sanctioned. And that's the only thing I can focus on, that you asked me a question, and this is what the council rule is, and that we follow those. Not how it got here, when it got here, or such, but that's all I have. Mr. Bariak, do you have?
Mr. Chairman, if I could have a second.
Go ahead, let him go first.
Thank you, John. First, let me thank you. I appreciate the kind words as far as in reference to my stint on council. But I would like to alleviate the mayor of any connection or tie to, his knowledge. Of course, the mayor had no knowledge of what my stance would be once I found out, once I was appointed. So I would like to alleviate. So my decision and, my position where I stand as it stands now I want to make sure very, very clearly that I don't want it in any way, shape, or form to reflect on the mayor. I appreciate his appointment and I respect him a great deal. So I want to clarify that. And I'd also like to touch on one other thing too, as far as there are very clear differences, and I think from a suspicionless, warrantless drug test of a member of a public body, such as myself and such as the other members up here, we're not the same as other village employees. And what I mean by that, let me clarify what I mean. I'm not up here, I'm not in a bucket truck, I'm not digging a hole, I'm not at risk of some kind of physical injury, I'm not putting my colleagues at risk by being here. There's no danger of anything happening along those lines. And I've had people say, well, but you're voting on, you're making policies and et cetera, et cetera. I'm 1/5 of this body as far as making a vote. There's nothing that I'm going to do as an individual, as a single person, that is going to pass anything or make anything happen to this village in any way, shape, or form that the majority of this council won't have a chance to either approve or disapprove. So I just want to make sure that's very clear and understood, and to, again, thank the mayor, but also to make sure that the public understands that he had no knowledge of what my position would be in that situation. I didn't even know what my position would be in that situation until it was presented to me after I was already sworn in and was already a sitting council person. At that point, council has the opportunity to do and make their decision as far as reprimands, and that's where we are currently. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Mr. Bariak, did you want the floor?
I don't know what Mr. Branchy said about I wasn't aware that would be going into Fourth Amendment rights and that. But he would like it clarified. I don't know what the way council will stand, but just to alleviate all avenues, I'd put a motion on and we table it till next meeting, till we get an answer from Mr. Fritz, and then it's either that or the highway. So if the council doesn't want it, they don't want it.
Ms. Spetzer, Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Granchi, do you guys have anything else in this?
Yes, Mr. Fritz, the case is Chandler v. Miller.
That wouldn't apply in this case, sir. I was aware of that case. That case involved a candidate for a position, not someone who's already in a position and knows what the conditions of that employment would be. That's different. That case is on point.
Okay.
Is that all you have, Mr. Granchi?
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Zimmerman, Ms. Spetzer.
Yes. Unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately at first, but like I said earlier, we up here on council are here to serve the employees of this village. Unfortunately, we are also the example for the village. The decisions we make while we are up here on council, decisions we make in our personal lives are the ones that may be shined on the most. Our decisions are what get put in the spotlight whether we want to or not. We are the example. We need to be the example of how we expect everyone else to do. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else that hasn't had a second address? Okay. If not, before we go ahead and call for the roll, my suggestion here is to make very clear the boundaries that we're looking at. I mean, what I've looked into here is that this isn't guarded by the Fourth Amendment. That's what I've come up with. But the fact of the matter is, individuals that have spoke, I think we've had opportunities to talk to Mr. Fritz on this. And what I'm looking at here is our council rules here. What pertains here is pre-employment. You know, and I don't agree on the way that our procedure for doing so. I think it needs clarified a little bit clearer to each individual. At this moment, I don't know if Mr. Granchi's ever taken one. You know, I have no idea.
I have, correct.
You know, the only reason I know is because it blew up in my face, and then I found out, and I come and I asked, looked into it, and I see it's a pre-employment, and the only thing that the individuals up here are to answer to is what the council rules say. And you vote on that, and that's it. Okay, so if Mrs. King wants to go ahead and call for the roll.
Spletzer?
Yes.
Granchi?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Crop?
Abstain.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Okay, and that passes in, I don't know if Mr. Fritz, the first violation is a oral sanction, and that's just a verbal, correct? And I don't believe in what would take place is you end up having until the next meeting, and then that's a verbal then afterwards, I believe.
Written, Your Honor.
Written.
Or verbal, but it can be written into record is what I've studied. Okay. All right. Number 8, if Mrs. King could go ahead and read.
Motion to appoint Terry Wentworth to the unexpired term on the Fire Board commencing immediately and expiring 12/31/2023.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Wentworth messaged me and said he would step up to fill this position because it was still available. We know Mr. Wentworth. He's been around here for a long time, very dependable person. I would like to see him fill this seat so we can have a full fire board going forward and move on with business. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Is it Mr. Granchi?
I reached out to Mr. Wentworth when I saw this on the agenda to try to get a feel for who he is. Basically, the reason he wants to be on this board is because he wants to give back to the community and have something to do in his retirement. He seemed like a very nice guy, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
The fire board is its own entity. It has nothing to do with this council right now, except his position for being fire-related to bring back to us and that. And I know Mr. Wentworth, and he's a decent individual. He worked there as a bailiff until he retired. I have no problem appointing him.
Okay. Ms. Spletzer or Mr. Crop, do you guys have anything? Okay, if not, if Mrs. King could call for the roll whenever she's ready.
Granchi?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Crop?
Abstain.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Spletzer?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Number 9 is a motion to approve the opt-out cost analysis for the water and electric meters as proposed, if determined necessary.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second. Talk.
Okay, discussion?
Yes. May I have the floor first,
You have the
please?
floor.
Does that mean that we're approving this portion of the cost analysis?
Correct.
But I feel that we also need a new form, because the form that went with the old number is no good. We need to be able to send this to the people and let them make a decision.
I think you have to realize what the guys said about no further opt-outs is that originally there were 20-some people who opted out. There have been 500 meters already installed. So if you send those out to those people again, now they've got to go back and redo that. It's council's decision on whether you want to do that, but that's one of the things you have to think about, is that that has to be redone with those 500 individuals also, if you're going to do the opt-out. That's the alternative, is you leave it the way it is on the people who have already opted out, or you have to open it up and re-let everyone opt out again.
We're talking about 23 people, aren't we?
23 people that already opted out. But,
In a city of...
you know, item number 1 says notes and suggestions, opt-out notifications to be resent with new timeline.
Right, that's suggestions.
I would say yes.
Yeah, that's suggestions for you guys to see whether you wanted to do that or not do that. That's something you guys have to decide, whether you want those to go out again. If they go out again, then the 23 number could increase.
Who's going to make, Mayor, may I have the floor, please?
She has about 40 seconds left. That's all you have.
I didn't know I was being timed.
Time every.
I'm done.
Okay, Mr. Boria.
What we just talked about right here, how do we know whether we're going to put all of those suggestions every 3 months, or, you know, what was it, 6? Yeah.
Timetable for opt-out.
Timetables and all that. How are we going to put that in this piece of legislation tonight?
No, actually, if you read what it says, is you're looking at the cost analysis. So just the cost at this point, if you wanted to charge the individuals those opt-outs, or, you know, go with the fee structure that's there, or did you want to do something else? That's the decision you guys have to make.
Mrs. Pretty, wasn't this what you and Mr. Kropp and the
Yes, that's what
you guys put together?
Yes.
Well, you put it together.
But the suggestions at the bottom are the things that you guys have to think about. Do you want these people to have 3, 6, 9 months to figure out, you know, or pay over that time period? The renter situation is something that has to be considered. Are you going to go after the homeowner or the renter as far as that fee cost? Those are things that council has to determine. But if we can get the rate structure in place, then we know what that is.
So tonight we'll just be voting on the rate structure?
No, actually, we're just discussing it.
Or just,
right.
That's what I...
Oh, wait, it says motion to approve.
Right.
Yes.
So we've, I'm sorry, can I have my 40 seconds back?
Yeah, go ahead.
On Mr. Housley's memo to us, he said that, you know, he wanted to meet with us in a special meeting either Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, because he's not able to be here tonight with us as the finance director. Is this something that we could also address on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday? The open-ended parts of this?
If it's made part of the agenda, I would say yes.
The open-ended part of this is something that we could discuss and maybe clean it up a bit and then bring it back to the next council meeting and vote on it.
Want to just table the whole thing, or?
That's...
No, because I think the next time it comes to us, it needs to be in the form of its own ordinance.
But that's what council has to decide. If you approve the cost analysis portion of it, then we know what the cost and what the fees are going to be.
Okay.
Okay, then council has, the next step is to decide how you want it to proceed. Whether you're going to open it all back up for another opt-out, or what exactly you want to do, how the payment plan is going to be structured. Those are all things that council has to decide on that.
Okay.
And we can discuss that at the meeting with Mr. Housley.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Kropp, Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Granch, you guys want to address here?
Yes, just real quick, like Mr. Lane said tonight, that he doesn't believe that there should even be an opt-out in place. We have an opt-out in place already. I don't believe that needs changed at all. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Granchi, did you have anything?
Yeah, we've been kicking this down the road for months now. We need to do something about that.
Okay. Mr. Crop?
I have nothing.
Nothing? Okay. If Mrs. King, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and call for the roll.
Bariak?
Yes.
Crop?
Aye.
Zimmerman?
No.
Spitzer?
Yes.
Granchi?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes.
A motion to approve the DORA designated outdoor refreshment area.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, if I may. It was pretty well covered what DORA is at the beginning of this meeting by various people in our community. One thing that I wanted to absolutely bring up is number one, it does not legalize public intoxication. It doesn't. So at that point, if you're worried about that, people need to exercise personal accountability. If they get drunk and stumble around, that's on them. That's not on the DORA. It's not, they could do it behind a door and walk outside and accomplish the exact same thing. Furthermore, I spoke to police officers in both the city of Salem and the city of Columbiana, who both have established DORAs. Neither community has had any issues whatsoever. In fact, Columbiana had seen a huge spike in small business going to them when the DORA is active. They have theirs slightly different, where they do it event-based rather than time-based. But whenever they have the DORA, they see a huge spike in small businesses being patronized. I think the bottom line of this is that the biggest resistance is what if. I've said we don't legislate what ifs. Telling people what they should and shouldn't do. We shouldn't legislate morality either. It comes down to the person choosing to exercise the DORA, but there are far more positives to bringing a DORA to Newton Falls than there are negatives.
Mayor,
Mr. Bariak, you have the floor.
I have a question for the law director. Should something go wrong with this door, can we cancel it if by putting it back on the floor, Mr. Fritz? Hey, let's say we have a bad problem, like some bike gang comes in here and wants to drink in the streets. The chosen few comes in here. I know our qualified police department would take care of them.
Just to explain to everyone, all council is doing is approving the application. The application goes to the state for their review, and we have to have a public hearing, a full public hearing within 45 days to get the input from all the citizenry at that point in time. You are not passing the ordinance to accept it. Even if it comes back from the state and says, okay, if the public hearing people are okay, this city council still has to pass all the ordinances necessary to create the DORA. So I don't want to say there's no effect in doing this, but it's the first step to find out what the public, give them the information what it's about, have public hearings, get the feedback. All you're doing is asking for the application to be accepted today, not for it to be created.
And one more question for the law director, if I could, Mayor.
Yes.
Can you or Mrs. Pretty tell us if there's any increase in our liability?
Not at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Granchi, I heard you mention the communities of Columbiana and Salem. And I believe, have I also heard that Garrettsville has this same type of?
Correct.
Yes,
Garrettsville?
I haven't talked to them, but those are the two communities that I was able to get contact with.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I would be interested in, doing my own little bit of research. So if we could get some ideas of some other doors in the vicinity, it doesn't have to be like within 20 minutes or so, but within an hour's radius or so.
Salem, Columbiana, and Garrettsville.
I'm sorry?
Salem, Columbiana, and Garrettsville.
Okay, that's 3. Are there any more?
I missed,
Is that all you have, Mrs. Boriak, or
yes.
Mrs. Boriak, Mrs. Spitzer?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Zimmerman or Mr. Crop, did you have the first address on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I've had several people come up to me questioning this. I think a lot of more details need to go out to people in order to get this, figured out. But just some of my concerns are some of the businesses that are located within the zone. We have a dance studio, a Christian thrift store. We have a health food store. We have all kinds of different things. We have apartments up on the street with kids coming down into the street. We need to take that into consideration before we approve this zone, I think. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Crop, did you have anything?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. In reference to Mr. Zimmerman's comments, the way the DORA is set up and can be designed, and of course, as Mr. Fritz alluded to, we're not passing. We're not officially, finalizing the DORA, so that the public will have ample time to get all the information that's required, ask all the questions, public hearings, et cetera, et cetera. And it has to be approved by the state, as far as, if we were to approve this tonight. But the businesses that are involved by choice. They don't have to participate and allow people to come into their business with the DORA cups. It's an option. They have the option to do that and participate if they so choose. There's also time constraints as far as when these things, when it's active, when it's not. So these things are all, again, all the information stuff. It's good to ask questions and to get that kind of information, but we're not officially passing anything, and there's a lot of questions that can be answered very clearly just by asking the questions. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anybody want a second address?
Yes, if I may.
Who is that, Mr. Granchi?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Zimmerman, to your point, yes, there are those businesses within that scope of where the proposed DORA will be. However, there's also 2 bars that are separated from the street by a door. Nothing's going to stop anyone from, if someone wants to go into public drunk, they're going to do it. I understand what you're saying. However, the location of it also has several bars by it. It wouldn't make much of a difference. And I think it's important to also note that the zoning director and police chief have already signed off on this. So if there were an actual issue with any of that, then it would have been raised then. I think it's a good opportunity for our town, and we should at least give it a shot.
Okay. Anybody else want a second address?
Just real quick, my other thought is that it's part of this is to have a outdoor place for people to sit and enjoy a beverage while they're with a DORA cup. We already have ordinances, I believe there are ordinances in place that do not let you drink in our parks. So how can you have a beverage and be down at the waterfall in Veterans Park, City Park?
Doesn't include Veterans Park.
But the gazebo park's right above the waterfall. That's one of the destinations in mind. I believe it goes down to Rite Aid. I don't know if it goes into Veterans Park. Someone brought up today that the map looks like it extends partly into Veterans Park and partly not. So we need to look at those boundaries a little bit more. But that is another one of my concerns. Thank you.
Klein.
Okay, wait a minute. You're done, Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Boriak, did you want to say?
Mr. Fritz, did you, when I asked, I didn't get a clarification, or I must have not heard. If something would go wrong with this down the road, can we, as a council, vote it out? I mean, we give it a try. And if there's something happens way down the road we're not expecting, could we rescind it?
Certainly.
All right, that's...
Okay. Anybody else that hasn't had a second address?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And then,
I don't know. Have I had even a first yet?
yeah, you have one because I almost called you Mrs. Boriak.
Jeez.
Whoa!
Hey. I do want to make sure that we heard Mr. Fritz say that all we are approving is an application process. All that we are approving is an application process. And Mr. Stippert clarified the zoning map earlier when he spoke about it only goes to the waterfalls, the bridge, it's bridge to bridge. It is not Veterans Park. Okay, I'm done.
And with, you know, a little bit of clarity, like Mr. Fritz had said, this right here is not to say all of a sudden it starts tomorrow, because I'm not a voting member of council, and I'm not, obviously everybody up here, I don't really see the benefit in it myself. I don't really, I don't know, see the need for me to grab a margarita and go buy candles or something. I don't know. But is, you know, with this being said, is if we get community come in here and they're able to talk about it and give their thoughts on it, then I guess that's what's important. So this is a vote just to move forward, to be able to, for the community to discuss, you know, their thoughts, if they think it's a good idea, bad idea, or whatever. Okay, so with that being said, if Mrs. King wants to go ahead and call for the roll.
Crop?
Aye.
Zimmerman?
No.
Spletzer?
Yes.
Granchi?
Yes.
Bariak?
Yes.
Okay, this motion passes. And then, what do we got coming up here? Public comments. This is open to non-agenda items. So give your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Richard Mesnick, 242 Oak Knoll Avenue. I heard a lot of things today. Some of them literally knocked me out. It's amazing how much money we went through. Over $1 million out of treasury investment. That's unheard of. How did that happen? You guys need to put something in place so that in the future you can't do that. That's quite a bit of money. If this doesn't smack you in the face of a forensic audit, I don't know what is it. You've got to do this. Please, city manager, please consider that. I would also ask, and it was asked during Lyle's term, if you bring in the FBI or BCI or the auditor's office or whoever would investigate everybody, and I would start from my last term till present and let the chips fall where they may. If there's something there, there's something there. If there isn't, there isn't. There's just too many things going on that's blocking the eye of this city, and we got to put a stop to it. Thank you.
Richard Eby, 50 West 9th Street. This is about the opt-out forms for the meters. We signed opt-out forms where there was 2 meters. Now we have a water meter which transmits a signal 2 miles. So you don't need anybody to read that meter, but we still pay for 2 meters. I think that needs to be looked into. The electric meter was not installed yet, and it won't be until make sure they put the right one in. So that's it. I think the form needs to be cut in half, really, the price. Okay.
Tom Colosimo, 4196 Carson, Salt Springs. I'd like to address a couple of Adam's concerns. You cannot go into any of those businesses you're talking about unless that business has a sticker on their window or door saying you can bring that approved DORA cup into that business. If you don't opt in, then you cannot go in those businesses. This is only during designated hours that the city decides and boundaries. This isn't a free-for-all. And the bartender, before they give someone a drink and let them take it outside, it's up to the bartender to decide if they had too much or they can handle it going out in public. It's not a free-for-all. It's been shown successful other communities, and it's also like brought in like-minded businesses. We're trying to attract breweries, wineries, something to make this town a little bit more unique. If you have any more questions, I'd be glad to talk to you.
Katie Carl, 128 West Quarry. For the consultants, engineers for the dams, MS Consultants was used in the past. The Lowhead Dam over on First Street. Right before that is the water intake. Your water department supervisors will take care of that and tell you and everything, explain it. Roughly 20,000 is, are your costs, etc. There was talk about the canoes, etc., and the water trails, etc., and that was something that was not going to happen because we need the Lowhead Dam there because of the intake line, which can all be taken care of. But that was when the previous city manager was first brought in by the previous city council, and we can talk about that later on, but I just wanted to let you know.
Hey, do I have to state my name? Tanya Klein, 19 East Corey. We've been handed a mess, and we have a lot to clean up. So you asked, how did we get in this position? Because we didn't have the majority, remember? I remember how frustrated my husband was so many times, nothing we could do. So I would like to tell you guys that you're in my prayers. Please work together because you guys have a lot of work to do. And the people of this town deserve better, right? So I would like to thank you guys, and please try to work together. Thanks.
Julie Lemon, 2750 East River Road. So I made a request on September 16th. Still haven't heard nothing. But it was about a bill, $1.5 million from the Treasury Investment Board, where here's another $1,071.32. And I would like if the zoning administrator could probably maybe make it clear, because I've asked for the records, never got them, but it was on Mark Semper's part of the credit card. But when I called the company myself, because again, I've gotten no answer to my request, I found out that that was June 8th of this year. But Mr. Lynch also had two other accounts under 330-872-0806. That's the city administration number. And they were from May 6, 2019 and May 29th, 2019. There's been more frivolous spending than I've ever seen. I didn't even realize people could spend that much. Wow. But people need requests. There needs to be transparency. When people put in their requests, they need to be answered. And I did get an answer to one. I asked for 4 personnel records. I asked for Anna's. I asked for Andrea Perkovich. I asked for Sue Barker. And I asked for Pam Wolford. One thing I noticed is privacy is not being followed, and information that should not be released to a citizen is being released to citizens. There is information under Chapter 149.45 of the Ohio Revised Code. You might want to pay attention, Mr. Fritz. Chapter 149.45 of the Ohio Revised Code. When you send something through email, you are not allowed to send driver's license. It's Part C. I tried bringing this to administration attention, and from Mrs. Smiley's and Kathy King, I got, well, follow the sunshine laws. Guess what? Sunshine laws are based off the Ohio Revised Code. They're not going to go against what the law is. I checked the Ohio Sunshine Laws. It's not in there, but if you check again, chapter 149.45, you cannot and you may not give someone's driver's license number because people can actually change voter registration with it and commit voter fraud. Ms. Perkovich, I will go on record. I have your driver's license number because it was sent to me. I am promising you now, I am not going to use it. I will not use it. And I will not use the other three that I received. I got the argument of, well, we didn't know the law changed. Well, it did change about 4 or 5 times between 2011. You know what never changed? Part C. That's the driver's license. You have to protect your employees, but you have to remain transparent. This is not Mrs. Pretty's fault. This happened because of Mrs. King and Mrs. Smiley's. They need to be held accountable for it. I'm big enough to stand here and say I will not use that information. But you have to protect your employees and remain transparent. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Tim Stinson, 253 Arlington. The finance situation is not good, and I'll hold a lot of my comments until we get some better information. This is something that I've been saying for a long time about transparency and trying to request public records and things. We've talked about some things here, but a bigger part of this is kind of what I said earlier of we're not charging the right amount of fees for our services. We talked about the water plant rate study. Like, that needs to go into effect already. I don't understand. We may need to even double that, again, especially for the cities outside of Newton Falls and maybe outside of the township. If we're providing 25% of our water is going to, what do you say, Farmington? West Farmington. That's a service we're providing. We have the ability to upcharge. We need to do that. We need to do a better job at making sure that we're recovering the cost of the services that we're providing. The shut-offs and things, we should look at raising those rates, doubling them, tripling them to prevent the shut-offs and turn back ons in a single day. That's ridiculous. The sidewalk program. I was under the impression that was something different, and we were trying to lump the services that we talked about in the Parks and Rec meeting. I didn't realize that was going to be the assessed fees, but I guess that's an ends to the means of how we go about to get to that bundling and try to get neighbors to get one contractor so we can get some savings and do a better job at that. So I don't necessarily agree with what was discussed in those fees, but I understand that's a means to the end. But I'm concerned. I'm glad you guys actually held off on some spending. You guys may need to look at this was, I know a motion was put on the table a long time ago about freezing spending, but maybe we need to do that until you guys get a better idea of financing, or, set a limit to what any individual can spend. Just may need to look at that until we get a better idea. So, thank you.
Anna EB 50 West 9th Street. You're worried about, I know you can get the money somewhere, but you're worried about paying for the roads. We moved in here from 6 years ago from Fairlawn. Part of our property was Fairlawn, part was in Akron. We paid Akron taxes. But the way they did roads, and I brought this up to Mr. Bariak probably within 6 months of us moving here, because they were talking about doing roads then. But the way they did roads there, you were assessed. Just like on the Monopoly board, you're assessed. And you paid for your frontage, and you paid for half of the road. That was on top of your taxes that you pay. And believe me, my taxes were a lot higher than they are here. But that was on top of it. And if you didn't pay it outright, they put it on your property tax bill, and they also charged interest. Now, that's the city of Akron. So I don't know if you want to go into anything like that or do anything like that, but it's a way to pay for your roads and get them done when you want them done. Thank you.
Sorry, Chelsea Harper, 128 was Corey. Where's all the park equipment going when it's removed? Do we have a plan for that, or are we just scrapping it?
The front part, it would go up to.
It's moving up there? Okay.
Once it can be moved.
Okay. It's a family park. People have been going there for however long. Why would you charge them to use a pavilion that they are required to clean up afterwards anyways? Because I'm pretty sure you can charge them for littering, which is a heftier fine than having to pay $50 to use a family park recreational area. Okay, and then the Georgia statements, I actually found all of them, by the way. The federal law actually protects the state of Ohio and what rules the state of Ohio lays down, and then the city charter protects the city from whatever laws they lay down, because it is considered a private sector. So regardless of what Georgia state law had gone through, or regardless of what Ohio state law states per drug testing, it is the city charter and the city rules of conduct which are to be used in the instance of an employee refusing the drug test. So it is then up to council as to what they decide to do. Per the Ohio Revised Code, per city rules, per everything that it states between the charter, the rules, the federal government, it is up to you guys as to what you want to do, because you are considered the private sector in this area. Just like Ace Hardware has the choice to do what they want to do. Just like anywhere under the federal law, if they are under suspicion, it's not considered random anymore. If they are under suspicion, you have every right to do so. If they are not under suspicion, then it's up to you whether or not they follow the rules. But remember, what you do with one, you have to do with all. That's how it works. When you're governing an entire city, and Mr. Kropp, I have nothing against you. You've done amazing since you've gotten into office. Okay? But what you do with one, you must do with all. If you're not going to require a sanction to happen for breaking the council rules, you cannot require any of those other guys, except for, Mr. Kropp is right, the people who are in safety, like any police officer, any EMS, anyone who would be considered wearing a hard hat. But you also have to take into consideration all of the people in the city who had to take drug tests who are not in safety. Okay? How many employees have been let go due to a positive drug test? And the laws on recreational marijuana haven't happened in Ohio, so it's purely medicinal, and all of the bylaws in their state, you still can't operate a motor vehicle, you still can't carry it on your person, it has to be in a prescription bottle, okay? Any of those things still apply. Okay, next, the DORA thing. Garrettsville does wonders with it because they have it very, very close-knit, and there are constantly police officers driving through there, constantly. And as they state, and any bartender out there can tell you, all of those bartenders will not allow you to take a drink when you are completely intoxicated. This does not give you the right to be intoxicated in public. This does not give you the right to hurt any police officers or to have EMS called on you in those areas. This is not for you to get drunk and belligerent in public. This is for you to sip wine or sip a beer and walk through the different stores who are okay with it. Sip. This is not meant for you to get drunk up at faces and walk around where I'm walking my kids in a stroller. That is not what that means. And the times that Garrettsville normally does it is between, I think it's like 11 a.m. and like 9 p.m. They make sure that by the time kids should be in bed, like all of the people who are sipping that might go get drunk, you know what I mean? They can go do that, just not in the DORA area outside. They make it very, very strict rules. That way none of that can happen. Again, Mr. Kropp, nothing personal against you.
Laura Heisel, 227 North Center Street. I just want to address a couple concerns that were brought up from other people. One about the park equipment, because I was from Parks and Rec. Yes, it is planned and looked at to move it from where the old park is now behind the community center over to the new location where the new equipment was. That frees up a huge area, which is being looked at for the soccer fields, to bring the soccer fields into one area where everybody knows if they're going to be playing a sport, you're pretty much going to be playing at the park. That would also move all the equipment over to a nicer area where you have pavilions where people can sit at the pavilion and watch their kids play. And to clarify for the reservation fee, the fee to rent it, it was a reservation more fee than anything to prevent people from double booking, because it right now is a first come, first serve. And also there's no way to track who is there, and then somebody else comes and now there's graffiti all over the place. So then we have at least a time frame to look at, to go back and say, hey, you guys did this, it's on camera, because there's cameras there. And the fee was minimal. It's like a reservation fee, $5, $10, hey, we'll reserve your spot. And again, it's subject right now. It's been put on hold just mainly because we don't know where our finances are. So, but I just want to clarify some of that from the Parks and Rec meeting. Thank you.
Mark Snipper, 1023 Page Court. Up here as a zoning inspector. There was a question about my credit card. I'd just like to bring clarification to that. That was the moving of a conference table that was done from the community center to here. And those charges, when they come time, there was nobody here to pay for them. They needed paid, or they were going to charge us for every hour, or actually every 15 minutes that they were here, we were being charged. So somebody had to pay that. I was, unfortunately, the blunt of that, so to speak. So that that table, if you've ever seen it in there, it's so massive that nobody in the city could have moved it or put it together the way it was. They used the movers that they used prior. So they were familiar with it, and they were able to do a fine job. As you can see, it's well represents the city in the conference. Well, I just wanted to make that very clear to everyone up here. I don't frivolously spend on my credit card. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if not, we'll move into closing remarks. Mr. Zimmerman, do you have anything?
Nothing, sir.
Okay, Mr. Boriak.
Just a couple of things real quick. Our water and sewer, the sewer department has been in bad shape for a while. I didn't know that the water department was in such bad shape because I didn't know that we were supposed to institute both of these in January. I found out about it when we had a meeting, and we said, what are we going to do about it? I said, do about what? Right now, the hand's going to play itself. So all I want to do is just tell the people that I know $1.20 sounds a lot for a couple bucks for 10,000 gallons of water extra if you use that much. I don't use that much. But, you know, when I looked at this $50,000 study we had done, it's the only way we can really do it right now and be fair. I know one of the fellows that came up here, I was surprised to know how cheap the county was getting away with it. And I'm thankful for Mr. Hawkins and the city manager, Mrs. Purdy, that we tried to make it very fair for our people in the village. And like I say, we run the waterway out to Farmington, and there's probably other people want it, but it costs us money. So we need to be paid for our services. Now the sewer, that's another one that we're behind on. And both of these should have started in January. We're going to wait, I think, till January to start the one anyhow. Give everybody is that right, Mrs. Pretty?
Yes, that's correct.
We're going to wait till January so everybody doesn't have to worry about it until the first of the year. Thank you very much tonight. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, Ms. Blitzer.
I just have one thing. I know I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that like 3 hours ago, something about a meeting I went to for the Pluck a Duck. Well, I'm going to mention it at the end of the meeting because it's been 3 hours and you probably already forgot about it. The Pluck a Duck event is being held on November 7th, and you can look for these flyers in lots of the stores throughout town. So if anybody else needs information, my phone number is on the city webpage. Anyhow, Pluck a Duck is November 7th. Thank you.
Mr. Granchi.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for coming out as usual, and especially so to the department heads who came out for the caucus to educate us and the residents. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Crop?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. We went through a lot of business this evening and had a lot of good discussions. But with everything that's happened and council's position, I have to say I'm a little disappointed. I don't want to disappoint people, but and some people may be pleased, some people may not be pleased, but as of this evening, I'm going to tender my resignation from council, which some people may be happy, some people not, and I hate to disappoint people, but I'm not going to hold council hostage. I don't want to give, I want council to have the opportunity, and whoever my predecessor will be, or I'm sorry, whoever will follow me will be, to have the best chance to get in and operate. And I want to thank the mayor for the opportunity to be on council. I've enjoyed the time that I've been here and try to do as much work as I possibly could in the short period of time that I was on council. But again, I'm not going to make council have to make this decision to, hold me accountable. I will do that on my own. And again, as I said, I firmly believe in principle, and I'm willing to, as I told council previously, that this is the hill I would die on, and I'm happy to do so. It's unfortunate, and I'm disappointed, but I firmly believe in my position and my stance. As far as something that was mentioned earlier about laws and those kind of things, I can't sit up here and make a law that supersedes our Constitution. I can't make an ordinance that, goes against a protected class or a protected group of people or something along those lines that's already been passed. So what I personally believe is that my rights, my individual, as a U.S. citizen, our Constitution is first. I think everybody understands that. But again, as I said before, I'm a person of principle, and so I'm not going to hold council hostage, and I'm not going to do that. So it's with a heavy heart that I make this statement. But I do hope the council, everybody here, good luck with everything going forward. Now is obviously not a great time for this, but again, I have to think about myself and my position in my future. And of course, this isn't going to go away, and I'm not going to make council have to do this for the next several meetings or whatever, because again, like I said, I've made my position known, and my stance is what it is. So. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to be up here, and I hope that whoever comes up next and whoever fills this position will do a good job and will do whatever I guess council wants them to do. So it's with a heavy heart that I will tender my resignation as soon as we leave, and I will not be attending the executive session. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Pretty, do you have anything as a city manager?
No.
Okay. I was going to open up with my closing remarks to saying the one thing that shocks us was the finances, but before that I wanted to address Mr. Crop. That's with a heavy heart. I respect you as a councilman here, and that's why I appointed you. I thought that you were still, I would have to say that you were the best person for the job. I stand behind that. I hope that you would reconsider, because I know that we're in a difficult time, and you're a good man.
and I don't question that. All I looked at is what we have for council rules, and I always say that I'm a fair individual, but there's 5 people up here, I would always treat you each the same, and so I would hope that you would reconsider, and this can's about empty. We can take care of the test after the meeting if you'd like, but if not, I mean, it's been my pleasure serving with you. Other issues, I agree with Mr. Zemeznik, Mrs. Klein, different individuals, everybody here that brought up the situations of our finances here, and I'm hoping that Ms. Purdy is able to bring the gentleman that's been looking at our finances to maybe the next meeting or something, where we can have some type of almost a town hall or something like that, so people can ask questions of where we are, because not good. But the fact of the matter is, we wonder about the process and things that Mr. Zemeznik had brought up. It brought up. I said for 2 years, come on, let's do things the right way. You've heard me say that over and over again. Slow down. Let's look at this. And it didn't take place. You'd have individuals together that were willing to put their heads in the sand and not say no. That to go along with it. And that's how we got in the position that we're in. But I can tell you right now, I've had people in the community, they talk to me. I go around and I talk to anybody. And they were concerned about the condition of our community. That was before. They would be concerned now. But I'll tell you what, I would tell anybody here, our community is in good shape. And why is that? Well, everybody's up here has heard me use the same illustration. You like new cupboards, don't you? Everybody likes to put new cupboards in their kitchen, but what you don't like is you don't like the mess when you pull out the old ones. You know what? We're ripping the old ones out and we're bringing the ceiling down, and we're going to clean this up. I have a budget in my own house, and I have to follow it. If I have big expenses come out and something happens, the bank doesn't care when I can't pay my car payment. They don't want to hear excuse. They want it paid. We're not going to make excuses. We're going to bind together, as Mr. Zemeznik had said, in state auditors, BCI, FBI, anybody that will listen. We're reaching out to for their help. There's anybody, any rock that could be turned. We'll get to the bottom of this and fix this. It's been like this for a long time here. I know when I went to plant a church here, somebody told me a long time ago, the enemy's had his throne here for a long time. Yes, he has. We're going to get rid of it. Got some good people that have worked up here, and I would just ask that everybody in here, as well as throughout our community, that we're not defined by what divides us, but we're defined by what unites us. That's the love for our community. It's going to take some hard work. We're going to have to make some tough decisions, but we bear with each other and we help right the ship, and that's all I have to say. So do we have a motion to recess into executive session for number 1, personal matters in reference to the finance director and city manager, employment, dismissal, discipline. Okay, do we have a motion? If I read that properly.
Can I table that?
You don't have to, you can't really table it. It's if we don't have a first and a second, we just.
I'm sorry, well, I was just asking a question.
Yeah.
Forgive me for speaking, but no.
Okay. Yeah, if we end up, if we don't have the first and the second, we don't vote for the roll, then we don't go in. But do we have a motion? Okay, if we don't have a motion, then we don't go in. Okay. All right. Okay. So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn the meeting. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll.
Zimmerman.
Yes.
Spletzer.
Yes.
Franchi.
Yes.
Bariak.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Plenty of time.